When I turned 25, I realized I was not a fan of the easy love where two lovers live together in peace and harmony. I often wanted to experience the harsh type of love, one that would keep me worried and on my toes. I agree it was a weird thing to desire, but I liked it, and James was the perfect person for my wild romance fantasies. Do like and subscribe. James suffered from intermittent explosive disorder, or IED, which always made him rage even over little things. At the earlier stage of our relationship, I somehow liked this disorder, and silently hoped he never got better, even though he sometimes hoped to get better with the help of therapy sessions. I often made him miss his therapy sessions till it eventually got worse. Things ultimately fell apart when we went to a friend's birthday party together. We got a birthday invite from a high school classmate, but James was reluctant to attend because of his anger issues. I was able to persuade him to attend. On our way there, he got angry over every little thing. The cars honking too much, pedestrians, and my occasional giggle. We finally arrived at the party. It was a duplex booming with hip-hop jams and multicolored neon lights. We headed upstairs and exchanged pleasantries with other guys. We got ourselves a bottle of beer to start with. I saw Tanya at the poolside and I rushed down with excitement to hug her. We engaged in some catch-up conversations. Suddenly, we heard a scream behind us. A guy had fallen from the balcony. Almost everyone inside hurried outside to see. It was the celebrant, fatally injured. One of the witnesses said the victim was pushed off the balcony by another guy during an argument. He also added that the guy who pushed the victim fled after realizing what he had done. I looked around in search of James, but he was nowhere to be found. It was easy to guess that he had done it, and I left the party before the police came with an ambulance. On my way home, Tanya called to tell me the celebrant was in a coma and that the police were already searching for who pushed him. I pulled over at the front of our apartment and found the door open. I ran inside and saw James shaking in the corner of the living room. Immediately he saw me. He jumped out of the corner and locked the door behind me, then hugged me as he sobbed. I could feel his heart beating fast. "What did you do?" I whispered, now fearing the demon I had built. "He was saying annoying words I couldn't tolerate." His wavering voice made me unable to decode what he was saying, but I paid attention. He started talking about how bad my mental disorder had gone, and advised I stay alone on an island to fix myself permanently. "So?" I asked to make him continue talking. "He was implying I'm mad. Am I? He let go and tugged my hand fiercely. "You're fine. You're all right," I reaffirmed to him, and he took a deep breath, then dallied toward the kitchen to pour himself a glass of wine. He became calm shortly after. "How is he?" he asked in a cold voice. "In a coma," I answered. "It's sad, but he deserved it." James gulped the entire glass, then walked to his room. It was at that moment I realized James had become a menace to society, but it never occurred to me that I might someday become a victim. I got a call from a friend the next morning, wanting to know the time James and I left the party. James overheard me when I was taking the call and signaled that I shouldn't answer. So I pretended the network was bad and hung up. "Don't be foolish," he pointed angrily, but it looked cute to me. "Carter would be fine," and I began, and was interrupted. "If Carter gets fine, he'll tell everyone what happened, and I'll be put in jail or a psychiatric hospital," James explained, and I immediately understood. "Then what's your plan?" I asked. "To make sure he doesn't speak," he said, and I could see the familiar rage in his eyes again. How do you want to go about it?" I asked. "Making sure he never talks again," he answered, and walked out of the house. I feared James would try to commit murder, and I wouldn't want him arrested. I did all I could to persuade him not to go, but he still did. He came back a few hours later and complained he wasn't allowed to enter Carter's ward. "How many years would I get if I'm charged?" "Maybe a minimum of 5 years, or life imprisonment," I replied bluntly, and I could tell it only aggravated his intent to kill Carter. The next morning, while we were having breakfast, I could feel the uneasiness in the conversation and asked him what happened, He was reluctant at first, but later revealed it to me as he sliced an apple. He told me he was questioned by the police yesterday when he went to the hospital. I told him I wasn't at the party and you were the only one. He began to shake. They didn't seem to believe me. I could tell as the two officers stared at each other, but they allowed me to leave. We aren't safe. He could barely finish his statement when I heard a knock on the door. He didn't react to the knock and was lost in his thoughts. I opened the door to find a friend at the party and two police officers. We know he's here, one of them said as they entered. I walked ahead of them, leading them to where James was seated. James quickly apprehended me and placed the knife on my throat, holding me hostage. Go back, he shouted at them. But I remained calm, thinking I was just a fake hostage and he wouldn't harm a hair on my head. Drop the knife and follow us. The police pointed a gun at us. I was more scared of the gun than the knife on my throat. But as soon as I felt relaxed, James pressed the knife on my neck. I will kill her, he shouted at the police and kept on pressing the knife to my throat. It wasn't a joke anymore, as blood trickled down my neck to my cleavage. In the nick of time, before he could make a serious cut on my throat, the police officer shot his shoulder and apprehended him. I couldn't deny the responsibility of breeding a monster, and had my share of his brutality. Even before we started dating, I knew Jake was a fitness junkie. Not only was he a member of the local gym, he was also a fitness instructor, and he spent hours upon hours at the gym. He watched everything he ate and counted his calories diligently. It, however, took 2 years of dating to realize just how important fitness was to him. I'd never minded that Jake was ripped, but while he cared too much about staying fit, I was the opposite. I was very much on the thicker side, with big cheeks, belly rolls, and thick arms and thighs. In short, I was fat. But my body shape had never been a problem. I'd been fat when Jake met me, and was duly surprised when he took interest and seemed genuine. There were other girls out there with swimsuit model bods, the kind I imagined every guy hoped for, and they were attracted to him, but he didn't care. He said he loved me, and he did not hold back from showing it. Despite my inhibitions, I fell in love. He told me the shape of my body did not matter. Until it did. Time passed and Jake began to change. I caught him on several occasions looking at me with disgust when he thought I couldn't see him. The way he looked at me, I felt horrible. He began to make subtle jokes about my weight, but I ignored it. He loved me. I was sure he did. Conversations between us steered towards fitness regimens and workout routines and diets, as he not so subtly attempted to tell me that he was displeased by my weight and wanted me to look presentable. It didn't help that I was content with my body, and I turned down his suggestions. He did not like that at all. He stopped holding my hand in public, and when we had sex, which was not as frequent as before, he insisted that the lights be turned off. Eventually, I got fed up and asked if he wanted to break up, as he was not okay with me. The idea did not seem to have occurred to him because he looked at me like I was crazy and discarded the idea. I did not know he had other things in mind. He invited me to his house out of the blue one day and made dinner for the two of us. I had no idea he had added something in my drink until my sight started to blur and I blacked out a moment later. I awoke with an uncomfortable feeling around my wrists and a numbness in my legs to find that I'd been strung up in a basement, his basement. Jake was there too, sitting on the floor and watching me with longing in his eyes. I begged him to let me go, that I was scared, but he shook his head, telling me that it was for my own good, that he was doing this because he loved me. He came up to me and touched me, caressing my cheeks and my arms and whispering to me. His voice was soft and his voice tender, even as he told me that he'd used my phone to tell everyone that would think to look for me that I'd taken a trip somewhere, and assured me that his alibis were ironclad. It was then I realized he didn't care about the slim women because he wanted to shape me himself like some twisted creation. For weeks, he starved me, limiting me to one measly meal a day. When I complained, he whipped me. But when he was done, he sat with me, reassuring me that he did it because of love, and I'd be thankful eventually. Weeks turned to months, and I started to submit. I had lost a lot of weight. He let me out of the chains on good behavior, but occasionally whipped me and kept me confined to the basement. One day, he got careless, and I managed to grab hold of a fork when he wasn't looking. I caught him off guard later and rammed it into his neck. I didn't wait to see how much damage I'd caused. I ran away. The police found me out on the street, weak and cold, on the verge of collapsing, and I was taken to a hospital. But when they got back to Jake's house, he was gone, and there was no proof that his basement had been used to hold me hostage for months.
The next thing I heard was the loud siren of the police. I stared at my boyfriend and then back at the body that lay on the floor with anger in me. I slapped my boyfriend Jonathan with every bit of anger that was left in me before the police walked in to take him out. It had been 3 years since I told him that his anger was getting out of hand, and if he wasn't careful, it would lead to the end of many things, including our relationship. But growing up as a guy who only knew violence as the way to correct things, it was hard to change things, and I doubted it was going to be hard to change anything at all since he was now with the police. The night started out like any other night. We had said goodbyes to each other from the video call we had, and just when I was about to sleep, I heard a loud knock on the window, which made me scared for a minute until I realized it was just Jonathan.
For God's sakes, it's 12 o'clock in the morning.
I checked the clock that was on my dressing table for the time.
You should be asleep. You have morning shift tomorrow.
Jonathan looked at me thoroughly, and I could notice his eyes doing a secret glance into my room. I should have known that it was him not being comfortable, that I told him I was going to be home alone tonight. My roommate had to run a night shift at the hospital, which meant I had the house to myself since I worked at a restaurant and only had to go to work in the morning.
Jonathan, I told you that you need to trust me. All this sneaking in my room at weird hours is not it at all. It's really creepy in case you don't know, and it scares me. You also do it at night, which makes it too crazy to bear sometimes.
He ignored anything I said and then sat on my bed. He stared at the door for a good 5 minutes before eventually talking. I just wanted to be sure you weren't cheating on me. He looked nonchalant about it and acted like it was a normal thing to just walk into a room at 12 in the morning to be sure his partner wasn't cheating. I ignored him in anger and frustration at correcting him for the 100th time. If he was at least going to change, he could have done it a long time ago. I was just waiting for the perfect time to break up with him. It was hard having to deal with jobs and family at the same time. Talk less of dealing with his own excesses. I had slept for a few minutes when he suddenly woke me up again to ask what I would count as the most stupid question anyone could ever ask. Are you dreaming about another guy? I ignored him and turned to the other side of the bed. It was going to be too much stress answering him. How on earth could I have ended up with someone like him? And it had been 3 years of relationship with not even one break in between. I surprised myself sometimes. A very loud knock on the door woke me up quickly from the sleep that was most engulfing me, and I hissed in annoyance thinking it was Jonathan, just calling attention to himself. And not until Jonathan asked me if I was expecting someone, did I get up from the bed to answer the door. I got scared for a minute before answering the door, because I knew what Jonathan could do if it ended up being a guy. Beating up a guy was not too far from him. I opened the door slightly, and before I knew it or could understand what was going on, the door had been opened ajar, and the guy who stood in front of me, who had barely said anything, was on the floor, fighting for breath. I turned back to see Jonathan, who looked quite happy about what he had done. The look of satisfaction on his face was quite scary, and before I could say anything about it, he used the bottle in his hands again on the guy that was on the floor, already fighting for breath. I pushed him away from the body, and when I inspected who it was Nathan, my roommate's boyfriend. I called his name severally for him to wake up, but it was good as nothing trying to wake him up. He was dead. I turned around to see Jonathan with no look of remorse on his face, and without questioning, or even trying to understand it. I walked past him to get my phone. I could not control it anymore. It was beyond me. I dialed the police on the phone and gave them the information, sneakily, just so Jonathan wouldn't know I was calling the police on him. He was going to kill me before I could even tell them what I wanted to, because it was obvious he had no mercy in him for people all in the name of love. How stupid that just sounded. Still in the process of trying to wake up Nathan as much as I could, Jonathan still stood there, telling me not to touch him because it meant I was cheating on him and would do more if the guy was still alive. I stared at him in disbelief before crying all over again. How could I have gotten myself into a mess as crazy as this? A few minutes later, the police arrived, and that was when half of the neighborhood woke up to check what was going on that could have warranted the attention of the police. Who wouldn't be worried if they suddenly heard the police at 1 o'clock in the morning? My roommate kept calling me. She probably had heard about the siren and wanted to ask if I was okay. How could I begin to explain that I was really okay and it affected her more than me? How? Jonathan looked at me in confusion when the police arrived, and just when he raised his hands to pull me closer to himself forcefully, all in the name of love or questioning, I moved away from him until the police arrived to handcuff him. I felt relieved for a while, but couldn't ignore the heaviness in my heart at the death of Nathan, and considering the fact that I would be the one to tell my roommate what happened and why it happened. She was going to hate me. I walked back into my room gently after everything went down, and the whole neighborhood was quiet again. I couldn't sleep again, in fear of Jonathan somehow reappearing to punish me for what I did. But amidst everything that happened, I had only one question in my mind. How exactly did I meet him? I turned and tossed in my bed for the answer to the question, and another one popped up. Why on earth did I meet him? I hated myself at the moment. Why? Why?
Hollywood is great and makes almost all girls believe in a love that's perfect, true, and without blemish. With this mindset, I said yes to Costello with the hope that he was going to be as perfect as my favorite Disney princes. The first week of the relationship was nothing less than perfect because he was protective, always ensuring that I was safe, and with guards everywhere I went just so he wouldn't hear anything that went wrong for some reason. Life was good, relationship was good, I loved love, and because of Costello, I made sure to keep loving love. Costello was a rich guy, always showering me with gifts, and anything I said I wanted, without taking a long pause to think about it, he was that amazing. Though I had not met anyone who I could say was his family, and he didn't talk about them as well, I didn't bother asking because I didn't want to feel like I was pressuring him to tell me things that he probably wasn't comfortable about or things he just wasn't ready to say. Get dressed, Mamacita. Wear your second best dress. I want you to save your best dress for the future. Something amazing is coming up, he said in a seductive voice over the phone. I loved the way he talked to me and the way he made me feel on top of the world. I'll pick you up in 2 hours, he said before hanging up. I had to be dressed perfectly or almost perfect since he wanted me to save the best for another day. I spent about 40 minutes on my makeup after having my bath. I checked the time I had, and I had about 30 minutes to myself before he showed up. I sat quietly opposite the mirror, a big smile on my face unconsciously, and when I went back to my consciousness, Costello's name displayed with love emojis on my phone screen. I'm outside, Mamacita, he said sharply and hung up immediately. I checked the phone to be sure that he really hung up. Why? I picked up my bag and went out immediately to be sure everything was fine. He even came minutes early, which was weird because he always came at the exact time that he said. His black Bugatti La Voiture Noire shone brightly in the dark, even without a light, and I knew that despite the fact that I actually loved Costello as a person, I loved his money as well. He was rich, wealthy, and I loved wealth and riches. Good combination if you asked me. He was quiet throughout the drive and only said a few words to whatever questions I asked. Poppy? I placed his free hand into mine and he pulled it away almost immediately, not making eye contact. I repeated the same action and he did the same thing again. What's wrong? I asked him sadly, but he said nothing. I kept quiet after that. This was probably a prank for where he was taking me. Different thoughts raced through my mind as I tried to understand what was going on with him. His phone rang and with a number that had no caller ID. He picked it up and only said 2 words to the person on the other line before hanging up. Almost there. He took a sharp turn to the right after the call towards an unfamiliar route. I asked him what was going on, but he still refused to say anything and only focused on his driving. The road was dark, quiet, and smelled of alcohol, cigarettes, and stale blood. He smirked in an evil manner as he drove further into the road. I kept asking him questions and he continued being silent until he parked the car in the middle of the road. I tried to open the door, something I felt I should have done before we got that far in the road. The door was stuck, and no matter how much I tried to open it, it wouldn't open. I begged him quietly and then loudly, but he didn't hear anything I said. He got down from the car and then locked it. He went ahead to talk to someone who came out of nowhere. Costello kept pointing at me as he talked to the person. The person nodded as he told him things I couldn't hear. I got scared. Anything could happen because I didn't know what they could be planning for me. I tried to open the door again, but it didn't even move. My heart skipped a beat as the person Costello was talking to approached me slowly, and Costello walked into the dark. I guessed that a house was there, but I couldn't see it, which would explain where the other person came from. The person got to the door and opened the door, and I began struggling so hard to open easily. He placed a bag over my head before I could see my face and tied my hands and legs amidst my struggle to stop him. He removed the paper bag and placed a tape over my lips before quickly covering my face again, carefully enough so that I wouldn't notice his face. He carried me over his shoulders and walked towards an area that I couldn't use just my ears to discern. And after a few minutes, he dropped me on the floor like I was a lifeless body. I screamed at the pain from the fall before hoping that even though Costello was one of them, he would still somehow save me from them. He says he loves me. I know he does, I thought to myself, and I used it to assure myself that nothing was going to happen. This is how far I can go, I heard Costello's voice, and then I didn't hear it again. I waited patiently to hear his voice again, but it didn't come. Everywhere was as silent as night, and I began to cry, begging them to show me mercy and just let me go, and would never say anything about any of this. They laughed at me. They told me I was a fool and just accept my fate, accepting whatever was going to come. I whimpered at every slight movement I felt towards me and calmed down again when I felt it all away from me, and it continued until someone eventually lifted me up from the floor and carried me over his shoulder again. I couldn't even beg whoever it was anymore. I was already tired from all the energy I had burned while crying and begging them earlier. A familiar scent was picking up my nose. Costello? He was still there. Something in me made me happy at the thought that even though he was torturing me, the person that carried me removed the paper bag from my face and then the tape before taking off the ropes off my hands and my legs. I saw his face clearly, eventually, and a big smile was plastered on his face. The road became bright all of a sudden, and I saw Costello on the other side of his car laughing so hard. What's so funny to him? I was annoyed, waiting for him to explain what exactly was funny. He spoke up eventually, and I stared at him in disbelief. "April Fools," he said and pointed at me while still laughing hard. I picked up my bag from his car and left, but not before yelling at him, "Damn you, Costello."
When I turned 25, I realized I was not a fan of the easy love where two lovers live together in peace and harmony. I often wanted to experience the harsh type of love, one that would keep me worried and on my toes. I agree it was a weird thing to desire, but I liked it, and James was the perfect person for my wild romance fantasies. Do like and subscribe. James suffered from intermittent explosive disorder, or IED, which always made him rage even over little things. At the earlier stage of our relationship, I somehow liked this disorder, and silently hoped he never got better, even though he sometimes hoped to get better with the help of therapy sessions. I often made him miss his therapy sessions till it eventually got worse. Things ultimately fell apart when we went to a friend's birthday party together. We got a birthday invite from a high school classmate, but James was reluctant to attend because of his anger issues. I was able to persuade him to attend. On our way there, he got angry over every little thing. The cars honking too much, pedestrians, and my occasional giggle. We finally arrived at the party. It was a duplex booming with hip-hop jams and multicolored neon lights. We headed upstairs and exchanged pleasantries with other guys. We got ourselves a bottle of beer to start with. I saw Tanya at the poolside, and I rushed down with excitement to hug her. We engaged in some catch-up conversations. Suddenly, we heard a scream behind us. A guy had fallen from the balcony. Almost everyone inside hurried outside to see. It was the celebrant, fatally injured. One of the witnesses said the victim was pushed off the balcony by another guy during an argument. He also added that the guy who pushed the victim fled after realizing what he had done. I looked around in search of James, but he was nowhere to be found. It was easy to guess that he had done it, and I left the party before the police came with an ambulance. On my way home, Tanya called to tell me the celebrant was in a coma and that the police were already searching for who pushed him. I pulled over at the front of our apartment and found the door open. I ran inside and saw James shaking in the corner of the living room. Immediately he saw me. He jumped out of the corner and locked the door behind me, then hugged me as he sobbed. I could feel his heart beating fast. "What did you do?" I whispered, now fearing the demon I had built. "He was saying annoying words I couldn't tolerate." His wavering voice made me unable to decode what he was saying, but I paid attention. He started talking about how bad my mental disorder had gone, and advised I stay alone on an island to fix myself permanently. "So?" I asked to make him continue talking. "He was implying I'm mad. Am I? He let go and tugged my hand fiercely. "You're fine. You're all right," I reaffirmed to him, and he took a deep breath, then dallied toward the kitchen to pour himself a glass of wine. He became calm shortly after. "How is he?" he asked in a cold voice. "In a coma," I answered. "It's sad, but he deserved it." James gulped the entire glass, then walked to his room. It was at that moment I realized James had become a menace to society, but it never occurred to me that I might someday become a victim. I got a call from a friend the next morning, wanting to know the time James and I left the party. James overheard me when I was taking the call and signaled that I shouldn't answer. So I pretended the network was bad and hung up. "Don't be foolish," he pointed angrily, but it looked cute to me. "Carter would be fine," and I began, and was interrupted. "If Carter gets fine, he'll tell everyone what happened, and I'll be put in jail or a psychiatric hospital," James explained, and I immediately understood. "Then what's your plan?" I asked. "To make sure he doesn't speak," he said, and I could see the familiar rage in his eyes again. How do you want to go about it?" I asked. "Making sure he never talks again," he answered, and walked out of the house. I feared James would try to commit murder, and I wouldn't want him arrested. I did all I could to persuade him not to go, but he still did. He came back a few hours later and complained he wasn't allowed to enter Carter's ward. "How many years would I get if I'm charged?" "Maybe a minimum of 5 years, or life imprisonment," I replied bluntly, and I could tell it only aggravated his intent to kill Carter. The next morning, while we were having breakfast, I could feel the uneasiness in the conversation and asked him what happened. He was reluctant at first, but later revealed it to me as he sliced an apple. He told me he was questioned by the police yesterday when he went to the hospital. "I told them I wasn't at the party and you were the only one," he began to shake. "They didn't seem to believe me. I could tell as the two officers stared at each other, but they allowed me to leave. We aren't safe." He could barely finish his statement when I heard a knock on the door. He didn't react to the knock and was lost in his thoughts. I opened the door to find a friend at the party and 2 police officers. "We know he's here," one of them said as they entered. I walked ahead of them, leading them to where James was seated. James quickly apprehended me and placed the knife on my throat, holding me hostage. "Go back!" he shouted at them. But I remained calm, thinking I was just a fake hostage and he wouldn't harm a hair on my head. "Drop the knife and follow us." The police pointed a gun at us. I was more scared of the gun than the knife on my throat. But as soon as I felt relaxed, James pressed the knife on my neck. "I will kill her!" he shouted at the police and kept on pressing the knife to my throat. It wasn't a joke anymore, as blood trickled down my neck to my cleavage. In the nick of time, before he could make a serious cut on my throat, the police officer shot his shoulder and apprehended him. I couldn't deny the responsibility of breeding a monster, and had my share of his brutality. Even before we started dating, I knew Jake was a fitness junkie. Not only was he a member of the local gym, he was also a fitness instructor, and he spent hours upon hours at the gym. He watched everything he ate and counted his calories diligently. It, however, took 2 years of dating to realize just how important fitness was to him. I'd never minded that Jake was ripped, but while he cared too much about staying fit, I was the opposite. I was very much on the thicker side, with big cheeks, belly rolls, and thick arms and thighs. In short, I was fat. But my body shape had never been a problem. I'd been fat when Jake met me, and was duly surprised when he took interest and seemed genuine. There were other girls out there with swimsuit model bods, the kind I imagined every guy hoped for, and they were attracted to him, but he didn't care. He said he loved me, and he did not hold back from showing it. Despite my inhibitions, I fell in love. He told me the shape of my body did not matter. Until it did. Time passed and Jake began to change. I caught him on several occasions looking at me with disgust when he thought I couldn't see him. The way he looked at me, I felt horrible. He began to make subtle jokes about my weight, but I ignored it. He loved me. I was sure he did. Conversations between us steered towards fitness regimens and workout routines and diets, as he not so subtly attempted to tell me that he was displeased by my weight and wanted me to look presentable. It didn't help that I was content with my body, and I turned down his suggestions. He did not like that at all. He stopped holding my hand in public, and when we had sex, which was not as frequent as before, he insisted that the lights be turned off. Eventually, I got fed up and asked if he wanted to break up, as he was not okay with me. The idea did not seem to have occurred to him because he looked at me like I was crazy and discarded the idea. I did not know he had other things in mind. He invited me to his house out of the blue one day and made dinner for the two of us. I had no idea he had added something in my drink until my sight started to blur and I blacked out a moment later. I awoke with an uncomfortable feeling around my wrists and a numbness in my legs to find that I'd been strung up in a basement, his basement. Jake was there too, sitting on the floor and watching me with longing in his eyes. I begged him to let me go, that I was scared, but he shook his head, telling me that it was for my own good, that he was doing this because he loved me. He came up to me and touched me, caressing my cheeks and my arms and whispering to me. His voice was soft and his voice tender, even as he told me that he'd used my phone to tell everyone that would think to look for me that I'd taken a trip somewhere, and assured me that his alibis were ironclad. It was then I realized he didn't care about the slim women because he wanted to shape me himself like some twisted creation. For weeks, he starved me, limiting me to one measly meal a day. When I complained, he whipped me. But when he was done, he sat with me, reassuring me that he did it because of love, and I'd be thankful eventually. Weeks turned to months, and I started to submit. I had lost a lot of weight. He let me out of the chains on good behavior, but occasionally whipped me and kept me confined to the basement. One day, he got careless, and I managed to grab hold of a fork when he wasn't looking. I caught him off guard later and rammed it into his neck. I didn't wait to see how much damage I'd caused. I ran away. The police found me out on the street, weak and cold, on the verge of collapsing, and I was taken to a hospital. But when they got back to Jake's house, he was gone, and there was no proof that his basement had been used to hold me hostage for months.
The next thing I heard was the loud siren of the police. I stared at my boyfriend and then back at the body that lay on the floor with anger in me. I slapped my boyfriend Jonathan with every bit of anger that was left in me before the police walked in to take him out. It had been 3 years since I told him that his anger was getting out of hand, and if he wasn't careful, it would lead to the end of many things, including our relationship. But growing up as a guy who only knew violence as the way to correct things, it was hard to change things, and I doubted it was going to be hard to change anything at all since he was now with the police. The night started out like any other night. We had said goodbyes to each other from the video call we had, and just when I was about to sleep, I heard a loud knock on the window, which made me scared for a minute until I realized it was just Jonathan.
For God's sakes, it's 12 o'clock in the morning.
I checked the clock that was on my dressing table for the time.
You should be asleep. You have morning shift tomorrow.
Jonathan looked at me thoroughly, and I could notice his eyes doing a secret glance into my room. I should have known that it was him not being comfortable, that I told him I was going to be home alone tonight. My roommate had to run a night shift at the hospital, which meant I had the house to myself since I worked at a restaurant and only had to go to work in the morning.
Jonathan, I told you that you need to trust me. All this sneaking in my room at weird hours is not it at all. It's really creepy in case you don't know, and it scares me. You also do it at night, which makes it too crazy to bear sometimes.
He ignored anything I said and then sat on my bed. He stared at the door for a good 5 minutes before eventually talking. I just wanted to be sure you weren't cheating on me. He looked nonchalant about it and acted like it was a normal thing to just walk into a room at 12 in the morning to be sure his partner wasn't cheating. I ignored him in anger and frustration at correcting him for the 100th time. If he was at least going to change, he could have done it a long time ago. I was just waiting for the perfect time to break up with him. It was hard having to deal with jobs and family at the same time. Talk less of dealing with his own excesses. I had slept for a few minutes when he suddenly woke me up again to ask what I would count as the most stupid question anyone could ever ask. Are you dreaming about another guy? I ignored him and turned to the other side of the bed. It was going to be too much stress answering him. How on earth could I have ended up with someone like him? And it had been 3 years of relationship with not even one break in between. I surprised myself sometimes. A very loud knock on the door woke me up quickly from the sleep that was most engulfing me, and I hissed in annoyance thinking it was Jonathan, just calling attention to himself. And not until Jonathan asked me if I was expecting someone did I get up from the bed to answer the door. I got scared for a minute before answering the door because I knew what Jonathan could do if it ended up being a guy. Beating up a guy was not too far from him. I opened the door slightly, and before I knew it or could understand what was going on, the door had been opened ajar, and the guy who stood in front of me, who had barely said anything, was on the floor, fighting for breath. I turned back to see Jonathan, who looked quite happy about what he had done. The look of satisfaction on his face was quite scary, and before I could say anything about it, he used the bottle in his hands again on the guy that was on the floor, already fighting for breath. I pushed him away from the body, and when I inspected who it was Nathan, my roommate's boyfriend. I called his name severally for him to wake up, but it was good as nothing trying to wake him up. He was dead. I turned around to see Jonathan with no look of remorse on his face, and without questioning or even trying to understand it, I walked past him to get my phone. I could not control it anymore. It was beyond me. I dialed the police on the phone and gave them the information, sneakily, just so Jonathan wouldn't know I was calling the police on him. He was going to kill me before I could even tell them what I wanted to, because it was obvious he had no mercy in him for people all in the name of love. How stupid that just sounded. Still in the process of trying to wake up Nathan as much as I could, Jonathan still stood there, telling me not to touch him because it meant I was cheating on him and would do more if the guy was still alive. I stared at him in disbelief before crying all over again. How could I have gotten myself into a mess as crazy as this? A few minutes later, the police arrived, and that was when half of the neighborhood woke up to check what was going on that could have warranted the attention of the police. Who wouldn't be worried if they suddenly heard the police at 1 o'clock in the morning? My roommate kept calling me. She probably had heard about the siren and wanted to ask if I was okay. How could I begin to explain that I was really okay and it affected her more than me? How? Jonathan looked at me in confusion when the police arrived, and just when he raised his hands to pull me closer to himself forcefully, all in the name of love or questioning, I moved away from him until the police arrived to handcuff him. I felt relieved for a while, but couldn't ignore the heaviness in my heart at the death of Nathan, and considering the fact that I would be the one to tell my roommate what happened and why it happened. She was going to hate me. I walked back into my room gently after everything went down and the whole neighborhood was quiet again. I couldn't sleep again in fear of Jonathan somehow reappearing to punish me for what I did. But amidst everything that happened, I had only one question in my mind. How exactly did I meet him? I turned and tossed in my bed for the answer to the question, and another one popped up. Why on earth did I meet him? I hated myself at the moment. Why? Why?
Hollywood is great and makes almost all girls believe in a love that's perfect, true, and without blemish. With this mindset, I said yes to Costello with the hope that he was going to be as perfect as my favorite Disney princess. The first week of the relationship was nothing less than perfect because he was protective, always ensuring that I was safe, and with guards everywhere I went just so he wouldn't hear anything that went wrong for some reason. Life was good, relationship was good, I loved love, and because of Costello, I made sure to keep loving love. Costello was a rich guy, always showering me with gifts, and anything I said I wanted, without taking a long pause to think about it, he was that amazing. Though I had not met anyone who I could say was his family, and he didn't talk about them as well, I didn't bother asking because I didn't want to feel like I was pressuring him to tell me things that he probably wasn't comfortable about or things he just wasn't ready to say. Get dressed, Mamacita. Wear your second best dress. I want you to save your best dress for the future. Something amazing is coming up, he said in a seductive voice over the phone. I loved the way he talked to me and the way he made me feel on top of the world. I'll pick you up in 2 hours, he said before hanging up. I had to be dressed perfectly or almost perfect since he wanted me to save the best for another day. I spent about 40 minutes on my makeup after having my bath. I checked the time I had and I had about 30 minutes to myself before he showed up. I sat quietly opposite the mirror, a big smile on my face unconsciously, and when I went back to my consciousness, Costello's name displayed with love emojis on my phone screen. I'm outside, Mamacita, he said sharply and hung up immediately. I checked the phone to be sure that he really hung up. Why? I picked up my bag and went out immediately to be sure everything was fine. He even came minutes early, which was weird because he always came at the exact time that he said. His black Bugatti La Voiture Noire shone brightly in the dark even without a light, and I knew that despite the fact that I actually loved Costello as a person, I loved his money as well. He was rich, wealthy, and I loved wealth and riches. Good combination if you asked me. He was quiet throughout the drive and only said a few words to whatever questions I asked. Poppy? I placed his free hand into mine and he pulled it away almost immediately, not making eye contact. I repeated the same action and he did the same thing again. What's wrong? I asked him sadly, but he said nothing. I kept quiet after that. This was probably a prank for where he was taking me. Different thoughts raced through my mind as I tried to understand what was going on with him. His phone rang and with a number that had no caller ID. He picked it up and only said 2 words to the person on the other line before hanging up. Almost there. He took a sharp turn to the right after the call towards an unfamiliar route. I asked him what was going on, but he still refused to say anything and only focused on his driving. The road was dark, quiet, and smelled of alcohol, cigarettes, and stale blood. He smirked in an evil manner as he drove further into the road. I kept asking him questions and he continued being silent until he parked the car in the middle of the road. I tried to open the door, something I felt I should have done before we got that far in the road. The door was stuck and no matter how much I tried to open it, it wouldn't open. I begged him quietly and then loudly, but he didn't hear anything I said. He got down from the car and then locked it. He went ahead to talk to someone who came out of nowhere. Costello kept pointing at me as he talked to the person. The person nodded as he told him things I couldn't hear. I got scared. Anything could happen because I didn't know what they could be planning for me. I tried to open the door again, but it didn't even move. My heart skipped a beat as the person Costello was talking to approached me slowly, and Costello walked into the dark. I guessed that a house was there, but I couldn't see it, which would explain where the other person came from. The person got to the door and opened the door, and I began struggling so hard to open easily. He placed a bag over my head before I could see my face and tied my hands and legs amidst my struggle to stop him. He removed the paper bag and placed a tape over my lips before quickly covering my face again, carefully enough so that I wouldn't notice his face. He carried me over his shoulders and walked towards an area that I couldn't use just my ears to discern. And after a few minutes, he dropped me on the floor like I was a lifeless body. I screamed at the pain from the fall before hoping that even though Costello was one of them, he would still somehow save me from them. He says he loves me. I know he does, I thought to myself, and I used it to assure myself that nothing was going to happen. This is how far I can go, I heard Costello's voice, and then I didn't hear it again. I waited patiently to hear his voice again, but it didn't come. Everywhere was as silent as night, and I began to cry, begging them to show me mercy and just let me go, and would never say anything about any of this. They laughed at me. They told me I was a fool and just accept my fate, accepting whatever was going to come. I whimpered at every slight movement I felt towards me and calmed down again when I felt it all away from me, and it continued until someone eventually lifted me up from the floor and carried me over his shoulder again. I couldn't even beg whoever it was anymore. I was already tired from all the energy I had burned while crying and begging them earlier. A familiar scent was picking up my nose. Costello? He was still there. Something in me made me happy at the thought that even though he was torturing me, the person that carried me removed the paper bag from my face and then the tape before taking off the ropes off my hands and my legs. I saw his face clearly, eventually, and a big smile was plastered on his face. The road became bright all of a sudden, and I saw Costello on the other side of his car laughing so hard. What's so funny to him? I was annoyed, waiting for him to explain what exactly was funny. He spoke up eventually, and I stared at him in disbelief. "April Fools," he said, and pointed at me while still laughing hard. I picked up my bag from his car and left, but not before yelling at him, "Damn you, Costello."
My name's Julia Reynolds, and this all happened back in 2023, right after I'd turned 32 and was feeling that mid-30s pressure to settle down. Living in suburban Chicago with my marketing job paying decently, but not enough to ignore the loneliness. I scrolled Instagram one night and I stumbled on this matchmaker. Her handle was @SoulSyncMatch, run by this bubbly woman named Elena who promised personalized connections for real women. Her feed was full of testimonials from couples who'd met through her, smiling faces at brunches, engagements on beaches. I DM'd her on a whim, paid her $200 fee, and filled out this detailed questionnaire about my dreams, deal breakers, and what I wanted in a guy. A week later, Elena set me up with Mark. He was 34, worked as a mechanic in a local garage, lived in a modest ranch-style house in Oak Park. We met at a coffee shop downtown. He was handsome, but when conversation turned to careers, he admitted that he made about $50K a year. I was pulling $85K, and honestly, it bugged me. I'd worked my ass off climbing the corporate ladder, and the idea of dating someone who couldn't match that felt like settling. "I'm sorry," I told him over lattes, "but I think we're in different places financially. I need someone on my level." He nodded, polite as hell, said he understood, and we parted ways. No hard feelings. Or so I thought. Fast forward a month. I'm at brunch with my best friend, Sarah. We've been tight since college, roommates at Northwestern, shared heartbreaks over cheap wine. She's a teacher, always the optimistic one, and that day, she was glowing. "Jules, you won't believe it," she said, leaning in over her mimosa. "I met this guy through that Instagram matchmaker, Elena. Remember her? The one you tried?" My stomach twisted. "Yeah. What about him?" "His name's Mark. Mechanic. Super sweet. We went out last week and oh my God, he's amazing. Treats me like a queen. Open doors. Listen to my rants about grading papers. Yeah, he doesn't make bank, but he's hustling side gigs, saving for a house flip. We're seeing each other again tonight." I forced a smile, but inside, jealousy hit like a freight train. Sarah was happy with my reject? I sipped my coffee, nodding. "That's great, Sarah.
seemed nice when I met him. You met him? Her eyes widened. Wait, Elena set you up too? Why didn't it work? Money stuff. But hey, if he's good to you, go for it. That night I couldn't sleep. I stalked his Instagram. Private. But Sarah had posted a story of them at a park, laughing. He looked happy. She looked happier. Why her? I was the one who'd found Elena first. It festered for days. I'd text Sarah for updates, pretending to be supportive. How's Mark? Tell me everything. Oh, Jules, he's incredible. Last night he cooked dinner. Pasta from scratch. And the way he kisses, girl, fireworks. Each message stung. I started driving by his house after work, just to see. Oak Park was quiet, tree-lined streets, families walking dogs. One evening, I parked a block away and watched him pull into the driveway in his truck. He waved at neighbors, chatted with an old guy next door about the Bears game. Normal life. But it ate at me. Why did Sarah get that? Then came that Friday night. I'd had a shitty day at work, boss reaming me out over a campaign flop, and Sarah texted that she was out with Mark again. Movie night at his place. I snapped, grabbed my keys, drove over, parked down the street, watched him walk home from his garage shift. He stopped to talk to his neighbor, Mr. Wilkins, about lawnmowers or something. Laughed, patted the guy's shoulder, then headed inside. I don't know what possessed me. Jealousy? Rage? I slipped out of my car, hoodie up, and circled around back. There, by the foundation, a blue pipe labeled gas. My heart pounded. I peered through the kitchen window. Dark, empty. The back door was unlocked. Stupid. I pushed it open quietly, tiptoeing in. I pulled out my switchblade, kept it in my purse ever since a sketchy Uber ride years ago, and opened up the cupboards under the stove. Found the gas line, sliced a small hole. Gas hissed softly. I twisted the stovetop knob on, letting it leak. Then I rifled through drawers, found a lighter, pocketed it. Left a couple of matchboxes that I'd bought them earlier, just in case. Smirking, I slipped out and hid behind a thick oak tree across the street, waiting. Minutes ticked by. Kitchen light flipped on. Mark shuffled in, nose wrinkling. He waved his hand like swatting flies. Opened the window, muttering something that I couldn't hear. Grabbed a beer from the fridge and left the room. My plan fizzled. The gas wasn't building fast enough? He hadn't lit anything? Fury boiled up. I darted back, checked the yard, clear, and snuck in again. Stovetop still on, hissing. I grabbed a matchbox from the drawer. The kitchen door creaked open. Mark froze, eyes wide. What the? Julia? What are you doing here? I grinned, evil as hell. Goodbye, Mark. Lit the match. Nothing. Just a tiny flame flickering. We both stared, confused. Then, his gaze dropped to the stovetop. Oh shit, the gas! He lunged forward. I jumped in front, blocking him, match still burning. No! The air ignited. Whoosh! Flames erupted, hot and hungry. They engulfed my arms, my hair singeing. I screamed, pain like nothing I'd felt, burning skin, choking smoke. Reflections danced in his horrified eyes as fire spread across the counters, cabinets crackling. Julia! He grabbed a dish towel, beat at the flames on me, pushed me down, rolling me onto the floor. The fire alarm blared. He yanked me out of the back door, dialing 911 as the neighbors shouted. Sirens wailed in the distance. I woke up in the hospital, bandaged, IV dripping. Burns on my arms, face. 2nd degree, doctor said. Sarah was there, eyes red. Jules, what happened? Mark said you broke in? Gas leak? I was so stupid, Sarah. I saw you happy and I couldn't handle it. I'm sorry. She hugged me gently. You could have killed him. Yourself. Us. Mark visited the next day, sat by my bed, quiet. Why, Julia? I rejected you and then saw you with her. It twisted me up. I sobbed. Thank you for saving me. I don't deserve it. He sighed. Nobody deserves to burn. But you need help.
I've had my own YouTube channel since 2015. I do goofy man on the street segments where I interview people about their jobs. That's it. I have a small but loyal following, and I like to think that my videos make people happy. I crack jokes and get to highlight average workers. I never thought in a million years that one of my videos would end up making national headlines. But with YouTube, anything's possible. It happened a few months back. I was in a park in South Dakota. Really small town. Friendly, but very suspicious of outsiders. I had trouble finding locals who wanted to talk to me on camera. I was about to scrap the whole video and drive to the next town over when I saw a very pleasant, very average-looking woman. She wore more professional-looking clothes than anyone else I'd seen, and she seemed approachable. I headed over with my camera guy and introduced myself. Her name was Lisa, and she was more than happy to talk with us. She worked for the local government and seemed proud of her job. She was the ideal person for me to spotlight. I asked her some questions and got very friendly, natural responses. When I got all the footage that I needed, she seemed a little disappointed that the segment was over. I really didn't think I'd find anyone else in this town to film, so I asked if we could film her some more. She kept talking about her new house, and it seemed like a good idea to let her give us a tour. I'd never done a video like this before, but I thought it'd be fun to see how a reasonably successful single woman in South Dakota lives her life. Really? Me? She was totally on board. 30 minutes later, we pulled up to her house and she let us inside. It was a very modest home. My own house in LA was bigger, and I made money off YouTube. But the way she showed us around and gave elaborate backstories about all her furniture and decorations, she made it seem like she was living in a mansion. I don't know. Maybe this is what mansions looked like in South Dakota. Grady, my cameraman, followed us around with the camera. Lisa did most of the talking. I made my jokes whenever it felt appropriate. I had a feeling that this was going to be a good segment. She even had a really cute cat that followed us around. Viewers loved that. Pretty soon, she took us into her bedroom. It was just as modest as the rest of her house, aside from a huge bed with a weirdly ornate headboard. She bragged about how expensive it was. She also insisted that we keep her bedroom door closed. This was the one room that was off limits to her cat. She didn't want it scratching up her new bed. Well, unfortunately, Grady didn't hear that part. He left the door half open, and of course the cat rushed in before we could stop it. And right away, it clawed at the side of the bed like there was a bunch of mice inside. Lisa freaked out. Get it away! Get it away! Grady was holding the camera, so I had to dive for the cat and pull it away from the mattress. It clawed at me. I still have 3 tiny scars on my arm. I was able to get it out of the room and close the door. But when I turned back toward Lisa, she looked terrified. Grady had his camera pointed right at her. At first, I thought she was angry that her mattress had gotten scratched. Then I saw a $100 bill lying on the floor. Lisa put her foot on top of it, but it was too late. We'd gotten it on camera. Okay, interview's over. Time for you to go. She moved to the side, positioning her body in front of her bed. There was a long vertical tear along the edge of the mattress, but the cat hadn't done that. It was already sliced open. The cat had only pulled it apart. And in that tear, I saw more money sticking out. Lisa tried to push me away, but I easily moved past her and pulled open the tear, revealing huge wads of cash hidden underneath. It looked like thousands of dollars. Grady zoomed in. It's not what it looks like! I didn't quite understand what was happening, but I knew I'd gotten some great content for my channel. A small-town government official has a hidden stash of $100 bills in her mattress. What's with all the money? It's mine. I promise I didn't steal it. This lady was a terrible liar. The more she talked, the guiltier she seemed. I crouched down next to the money and looked at the camera. As you can see, these are $100 bills. Lisa, do people in South Dakota like to keep their savings at home? She tried to sputter out an answer, but when she couldn't think of anything, she attacked me. She was worse than her cat. She tackled me to the floor and started clawing at me, screaming that I had invaded her private space. Grady got it all on camera. When she was done with me, Lisa went after Grady. She tried to wrestle the camera out of his hands, but he thought of the perfect thing to say. You know we're streaming this live, right? It was a total lie. We never did anything live, but she believed it. She backed away from him, collapsed onto the bed, and started sobbing into her hands. Fine, I stole it all. I'm a thief. I was scratched up and bleeding, but I knew this footage was golden. I had to act like a real interviewer. I sat next to her on the bed and gently asked her to explain herself. She said she'd been stealing money from the county for years. She said she was a terrible person. And as I looked into the camera, I asked her the one question that still didn't make sense to me. If you have all this money, why aren't you spending it? Her house could be so much nicer. Instead, she had all this cash hidden away in a mattress. She looked right into the camera, giving me the moment that went absolutely viral when I posted it. I keep the money in my bed because I like sleeping on it. I remember the exact moment I stepped off the plane at Tegel Airport. The air thick with that unfamiliar European humidity, mixed with the faint scent of diesel from the taxis outside. It was June 2014, and I just turned 25, scraping together every penny from waitressing gigs to fund the solo trip to Berlin. I'd always romanticized Europe, the history, the freedom, the chance to reinvent myself away from the grid. My friend Anna, who I'd met in college, had been living there for a year teaching English, and she offered her couch in Kreuzberg. Come on, girl, Berlin will change you, she texted. Little did I know how right she was. My first day was all about wandering. I dumped my backpack at Anna's place, grabbed a map from her kitchen table, and headed straight for Tiergarten. The park was massive, like Central Park, with paths winding through lush greenery and people jogging or picnicking under the summer sun. I felt invincible, you know? That solo traveler high where everything's an adventure. I was wearing my favorite sundress, the blue one that made me feel pretty and carefree, and my sneakers because I planned to walk everywhere. I was meandering near the Siegelsaal, that big victory column, when this guy approached me. He looked ordinary, mid-30s, jeans and a tee. Entschuldigung, he said. Do you know the way to Alexanderplatz? Smiling politely. Actually, I'm heading there myself later. It's that way, I think. I pointed vaguely east. He nodded, then tilted his head. You're American? First time in Berlin? Yeah, just got here this morning. His smile widened. Ah, welcome. Alexanderplatz is nice, but the park has shortcuts. I can show you one. Only 5 minutes. I laughed a little. 5 minutes? It's gotta be farther than that. No, trust me. He insisted, stepping closer. Before I could process it, his hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. Not a light touch, a firm grip, like he owned me. Come, I'll show you. My heart slammed into my ribs. Hey, let go, I said, trying to pull back. But he held tighter, starting to walk, dragging me along the path toward the edge of the park. Panic mode kicked in hard. All those warnings from my mom back home, don't talk to strangers, be careful alone, flooded my brain. But I froze. Why couldn't I scream? There were people around, cyclists whizzing by, but my voice stuck in my throat. He was babbling about the shortcut through some quieter area, his fingers digging into my skin. I imagined the worst, him pulling me into bushes, no one hearing. Headlines back home about another missing tourist. "Where are you staying?" he asked, his tone casual, like this was normal. "With a friend. Please let me go." "Relax, American girl. I'm just helping." We were heading toward the Holocaust Memorial now, those stark concrete slabs rising like a maze. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Thank God. It was Anna. "Where are you? Meeting at Brandenburger Tor soon?" I yanked the phone out with my free hand. "My friend's waiting for me back at Brandenburger Tor station. I have to go that way." I pointed opposite, my voice shaking. He stopped but didn't release me. "Okay, but first goodbye kiss, and give me your number." "What? No." I stammered. He tightened his grip. "Long French kiss, or I don't let go." Adrenaline surged. I was terrified he'd drag me further if I fought, so I leaned in. He tasted gross, then recited his number, making me dial it right there so his phone rang. "Now you have it," he said, finally releasing my wrist, which was red and throbbing. I bolted toward the memorial, weaving through the slabs, hiding in the shadows until I was sure he wasn't following. My legs shook as I collapsed against one of the cold stones, tears streaming. What the hell just happened? I felt stupid for not screaming, angry at myself and him. Berlin suddenly felt hostile, not magical. But that night was the opening of the 2014 World Cup, Brazil versus Croatia, I think. Anna was out with work friends, and I didn't want to sit alone in her apartment replaying the whole thing. I was still rattled, my wrist bruised, but I craved normalcy, people, noise. And honestly, I was done with German for the day. My high school Deutsch wasn't cutting it under stress. Screw it, I told myself in the mirror, wiping mascara streaks. Find an English-speaking spot. I Googled Irish bars Berlin World Cup on Anna's Wi-Fi and found one in Mint called O'Flaherty's. It sounded perfect. Expats, beer, football, and big screens. I threw on jeans and top, hailed a cab because no way I was walking alone, and arrived just as the place filled up. The bar was cozy, dim lights, wooden stools, flags everywhere. I squeezed onto a bar stool, ordering a pint of Guinness to steady my nerves. The bartender was this tall Irish guy, red hair, tied back, freckles, with a grin that lit up the room. "What'll it be, love?" he asked, his accent like a warm hug. "Guinness, please," I said, "and keep him coming. Rough day." He poured it expertly, sliding it over. "American? You lot always go for the dark stuff. What's got you down? Jet lag?" I hesitated, then spilled a bit. "Nah, some creep in Tiergarten grabbed me earlier, tried to drag me off. I'm okay, but yeah." His face darkened. "Jesus, that's shite. You report it?" "No, too freaked out. Just want to forget and watch the game." "Fair enough. Name's Liam. If anyone bothers you here, you shout. We're a safe spot." The game started, the crowd roaring as Brazil scored. Liam kept checking on me between pours. "You know, Berlin's got its weirdos, but most folks are grand. I came here 5 years ago for a girl. Stayed for the beer." I laughed for the first time that day. "I'm Emily. Came for the adventure. Got more than I bargained for." We chatted through the second half, about Chicago winters versus Berlin rain, his Dublin roots, my love for Bollywood movies. He was 28, had bounced around Europe bartending, landed in Berlin for its vibe. No place like it. Chaotic but free. By the end, Brazil won 3-1, and the bar erupted. Liam caught my third pint. "On the house, for surviving day one."
I remember that road trip like it was yesterday, even though it's been a couple of years now. I was 28, and my best friend Olivia had just moved to Los Angeles for some fancy tech gig. "Come visit," she begged over the phone. "Drive out here. Make it an adventure." Flying felt too impersonal, too rushed. I wanted to see the country, feel the wind in my hair, stop at quirky roadside diners, blast my playlist through the heartland. So I packed my car with snacks, a cooler of Diet Cokes, and hit the road westward. The drive was epic at first. I left Georgia under a humid sunrise, cruising through Alabama with the windows down, singing along. By Mississippi, I was munching on gas station peanuts and marveling at how flat everything got. Texas was a beast. Endless highways where the sky swallowed you whole. I pulled over in Amarillo for barbecue that made my mouth water, chatting with a trucker named Earl who warned me about them desert winds ahead. "Watch your tires, darling," he said, tipping his hat. I laughed it off, feeling invincible. New Mexico brought red rocks and starry nights. I camped one evening in a state park, staring at the Milky Way and texting Olivia photos. "Halfway there," I wrote. "This is living." But by Arizona, the glamour faded. My back ached from the seat. My eyes burned from staring at the asphalt. I blasted podcasts to stay awake. Motivational ones, about how women are better than men. "Always keep them under your heels," one host intoned. I nodded along, sipping lukewarm coffee. Finally, after 4 days and over 2,000 miles, I rolled into San Diego around dusk. The ocean air hit me like a promise, but I was bone tired, my legs cramping, my mind foggy. I'd booked a room at this budget hotel through Wanderbook, one of those random travel sites that pop up with deals. It was called the Sunset Inn. Sounded cute online, with palm tree photos and promises of cozy vibes near the beach. $50 a night? Sold. Pulling into the parking lot, though, my stomach twisted. A couple of sketchy guys loitered by the vending machines, smoking and eyeing my car. Just exhaustion talking, I muttered to myself, grabbing my bag. Inside, the lobby smelled like stale cigarettes. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with bleached hair and a name tag reading Darlene, barely looked up from her phone. "Reservation for Emily Carter?" I said, sliding my ID over. She tapped at her computer, popped her gum. "Yeah, gotcha. Room 112, around the back. That'll be $55 with tax." I handed over my card, ignoring the red flags. "Is it quiet here? I've been driving all day." She shrugged. "Quiet enough. Here's your key. Parking decal for the lot." I trudged to the room, the door creaking open to reveal threadbare carpet, a lumpy bed, and a TV. But hey, it had a deadbolt and that little chain lock thing, the bar that swings over for extra security. I'm always paranoid about that stuff. Growing up in the South, my mom drilled it into me. "Lock everything, Em. World's full of crazies." I showered quickly, the water pressure pathetic, then collapsed into bed at around 10 p.m., too wiped to even unpack. Sleep hit me hard, dreamless and deep. Until around 4 a.m., when a rattling noise yanked me awake. The doorknob was turning. Slowly at first, then with force. My heart slammed against my ribs. I sat up, clutching the sheets, staring at the door. The lock gave way, and the door cracked open an inch or two, stopped by the chain bar that I'd latched. Through the slit, I saw shadows, heard voices. Male, slurred, aggressive. "Hey, pretty girl. Come on out. We saw you check in. You got nice headlights. You alone?" Oh, yeah. Oh, look at that face. Pretty little thing. Open up, sweetheart. We just want to play. Terror flooded me. Pure, ice-cold fear. I scrambled for the phone on my nightstand, my hand shaking so bad I nearly dropped it. "Get the hell away! I'm calling the cops!" "Aw, don't be like that. We're friendly. Come here. We just want to smash and chill, you know?" I dialed the front desk instead, too panicked for 911 yet. It rang twice before Darlene picked up, sounding bored. Front desk. There's 2 men trying to break into my room. Room 112. They opened the door. Oh. I didn't know that you were still here. What the hell does that mean? I snapped, glancing at the door. The hand withdrew, but I heard them muttering outside. Hold on, she said, and the line went dead. I threw on jeans and a hoodie over my top, grabbed my pepper spray from my bag, thank God I'd packed it, and crept to the door. Peeking through the peephole, I saw them. 2 guys in their 30s reeking of beer, even from inside. They were arguing now, glancing around nervously. Let's go, man. She's calling someone. The other spat on the ground. Probably thinks she's too good. Let's bounce. They slunk off toward the parking lot, and I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. But rage boiled up. How had they gotten a key? I yanked my stuff together, shoved it in my bag, and stormed to the lobby, key in hand. Darlene was there, sipping coffee like nothing happened. What the hell is going on? Those creeps had a key to my room. She blinked, unfazed. You don't have a reservation. I pulled out my booking confirmation printout, the parking decal still sticky on my dash visible through the window. I checked in last night. Paid you. Here's the proof. She glanced at it, then typed something. Oh, I see. You book through Wanderbook. We don't partner with them anymore. Must have been a glitch. A glitch? You gave me a room, took my money, and now you're saying it's not valid? And you rented it out to those assholes? She nodded casually. Yeah, I booked it for the next month. Paid cash. I thought you'd checked out early or something. I was shaking, tears of fury stinging my eyes. You thought I checked out? At 4 a.m.? And you gave them a key without checking? I could have been... Don't get dramatic, she said, rolling her eyes. Manager's not in till 9. You can wait if you want. I paced the lobby for hours, sipping bad coffee from the machine, my mind racing. What if I hadn't latched that bar? What if they'd pushed harder? Every creak made me jump. Women like me were taught to be polite, to not make scenes. But screw that. This was my safety. By 8:30, a few other guests trickled in for the continental breakfast. Stale muffins and watery orange juice. One older lady noticed my frazzled state. You okay, hon? She asked, pouring cereal. Not really. Creeps tried to break in last night. Hotel saying that my booking's invalid. Her eyes widened. Jesus. That's why I always stay at Chains. Be careful out there. Finally, at 9 a.m., the manager showed. A balding guy named Rick, looking hungover himself. I laid it all out. The booking, the intruders, Darlene's b****. I want a full refund and an apology. This could have ended badly. He rubbed his temples. Look, miss. Wanderbook's been glitchy with us. We stopped taking their reservations last month, but sometimes they slip through. I'm sorry about the mix-up. Darlene should have double-checked. Sorry? That's it? Those guys had a key! He sighed. They were regulars. Construction workers. Probably thought the room was empty. You gotta relax. I stared him down. Refund now. Or I'm calling the police and leaving a review that'll tank this place. He processed it quickly, handing back my card receipt marked refunded. There. Done. Safe travels. I grabbed my stuff and bolted, peeling out of that lot like it was on fire. Driving north to LA, the adrenaline crashed, and I pulled over at a rest stop to cry. big, ugly sobs. Olivia met me at her apartment with wine and hugs. "Holy shit, Em," she said that night as we dissected it over pizza. "You could have been... God, I'm glad you're okay." "Me too," I replied, clinking glasses. "But it makes you think. Us girls out there alone? We gotta lock every damn door. Trust no one."
My sister Daisy and I were in desperate need of a long vacation. Being the owners of our own business, a small but very popular bakery in Chicago, we had our plates full. After the daily breakfast rush, there was still a very long shift of incessant baking and preparing the doughs for the next day. At the end of every shift, we were beyond exhausted. And after 2 years straight with no breaks, completely burned out. So when Daisy approached me with the idea of us taking a long vacation to rest and recharge, I was all in. She had been seeing this guy for a couple of months who owned a gorgeous cottage, her words, near Lake Michigan that served as a short-term rental. And it was popular, with a capital P. When she showed me the pictures on the website, I could barely believe my eyes. Daisy wasn't lying when she said it was gorgeous, and all the other dozens of people that had already stayed there thought so too. Our well-deserved vacation couldn't come soon enough. The cottage was around 3 hours away, but since our commute to the bakery was just a short walk, neither of us was used to driving long distance anymore. So Joe, Daisy's not-yet boyfriend, was kind enough to drive us there. Turns out his family owned a couple of short-term rentals in the area, and he would spend the week setting up 2 of them for tourists from outside the country. "The other houses are 30 miles away, so whatever you need, give me a call," Joe explained as he was heading out. "Service can be spotty from time to time, but worst case scenario, the closest neighbor lives just 4 miles away. His name is Mr. Willard." After giving us the codes for the security system and explaining how to use the kerosene heater in the pantry in case the power went out, he gave Daisy a goodbye kiss and went on his merry way. Without further ado, we took to exploring the property right away. The cottage had 3 suites with lavish bathtubs, an open-concept kitchen beside a spacious living room, and a front and back porch that had me dying to sit on a recliner and read for hours on end. There was a tool shed about a quarter mile from the house, and about 2 miles after that, a lovely pond that was deep and clean enough for us to swim. It was nearly perfect. The only downside being that it was too deep into the woods for my liking, and we still saw no sign of the lake. But Joe was letting us stay there for free, so I wasn't going to complain. All I wanted was to relax and forget about work for an entire week. I wished I could say that my first night at the college was every bit of the dreamscape I hoped it would be. But as someone who grew up amongst the city traffic and the constant noise of humans everywhere, the stillness of the forest was hard to get used to. Every ruffle of leaves on the ground and occasional nocturnal creature sounded too foreign to my ears, keeping me on edge. On the morning of our second day, I woke up to one of my matching sets of underwear sitting atop the kitchen counter. Daisy was not unfamiliar with playing pranks on others, but that was a very odd and nonsensical prank to play. I mean, what was the reasoning behind it? Either way, I went to put it back inside the drawer, but had the distinct impression there were fewer items inside than when I first put things away. Exhaustion and stress were probably messing with my perception, so I brushed those concerns aside. Midway into our third night, I was jolted awake by a piercing scream coming from Daisy's room. "There was a man in here," she said, shaking, once I reached the door. I opened my eyes and he was standing right there." There being the small balcony that connected her bedroom to the back porch. I checked every single tile of that balcony, but found no evidence of said man. I suggested that we should call Joe to investigate, or, in the very least, to stay with us for 1 or 2 days. But Daisy said he had called the day before, informing her that he had to travel further up north to deal with a squatter situation. He was now 7 hours away, and otherwise unable to come to us at least until day 6. Now, convinced that the cottage was haunted, Daisy announced that we would sleep in the same bedroom until we left. I suppose the isolation, coupled with Daisy's paranormal theories, were getting to me, because by day 5, I had this eerie sensation that we were being watched. All the time, I could almost feel the weight of invisible eyes following us around the house.
The eerie feeling only got worse once I confirmed without a doubt that some underwear of mine had gone missing. There was no explaining it away this time as some lapse of memory or a prank from Daisy. I made sure to remember where I'd left it, inside the small laundry basket in my bathroom. Daisy confessed to me that she also noticed some of her items had gone missing. In her case, toothbrush, hairbrush, and her favorite pair of fuzzy socks. Frightened, alone, stranded, and with no phone service, we decided to venture outside into the woods. Joe mentioned that the closest neighbor wasn't far off from us, so we could use his phone to call Joe and figure out what to do after that. Except we walked and walked and walked and didn't find this guy's house. Actually, we found no houses around. At all. There was nothing but miles of untouched woods ahead of us. With just our phone lights to guide us, it was already pitch black when we stumbled towards the fence that marked the property lines. On our way back towards the cottage, Daisy noticed a faint light coming from the tool shed. We hadn't been back here since the day we arrived, so we hadn't noticed it before. It was unlocked, too. We were mortified to find out the unassuming outside hid a space more reminiscent of a small office than anything else. The only tools inside were a bunch of electronic gadgets, tons of wires, and notebooks. 2 of them. "What the hell is this?" I asked, halfway inside the shed, already opening one of the notebooks. Daisy's confused expression told me she was as clueless as I was. A weird web page was opened on the forum of a website called Ask and You Shall Receive, although the actual URL seemed more like someone had had a stroke over the keyboard. A note right at the top of the page by the username Jin read, "The time has come, friends. For the first time, you can bid for a chance to interact face-to-face with our latest guests. We'll have 5 games to choose from. Peekaboo, Simon Says, Hide and Seek, Capture the Flag, and Tag You're It. As a request from our seasoned players, and to make things more interesting, for our final game, electricity will be out until dawn, and the phone signal blockers will only be on until 3 a.m. Can you finish the game in time? As always, highest bidder takes the cake." What the hell was going on? I clicked on the tab named Game 1, Peekaboo, and found a video file showing the outside of the cottage. Our cottage. I couldn't click fast enough. Most of the footage was uneventful, except for the part where a lanky man dressed in all black approached the cottage at around 2 a.m. and stood outside one of the windows, touching himself. Once he was done, he went around to another window and did the same. We didn't have to guess who he was looking at. He was outside our bedroom windows. Simon Says showed a burly-looking man entering the cottage once we were asleep. No surprises there. He had the security code, taking some things from my drawer and placing my matching set of underwear where I'd find it. Hide and Seek and Capture the Flag had been the man Daisy swore she saw inside her bedroom, and the other thief that stole some of her things. My fingers trembled when I clicked on the last tab. Game 5, set for today, was Tag You're It. And we were supposed to be it. I felt sick, and I figured that Daisy wasn't much different. I didn't know how or why, but these people were bidding on an opportunity to mess with us. And it said there that the game had not 1, but 2 winning bids. Probably 1 for each of us. Damn, that's even worse. And it was clear Joe was behind it all. Who else had access to us in the house? There was no other explanation. So I told Daisy just that. He wouldn't do that, she pleaded, eyes full of tears. He's one of the good ones, Mel. No good or sane person would do shit like this, Dee. He's a psycho, and so are his crazy psycho customers. We were wasting precious time, so I told her to search one computer for all the footage she could find to narrow down the location of the cameras. From what we saw, there were around 9 cameras inside the house, and 2 outside facing the back and front porch. Luckily, none were facing the woods or inside the shed. The pantry was also clear. With our phones practically dead after using them as flashlights, and with no electricity to charge them, we couldn't risk wandering into the woods in the dark. We wouldn't get far, that was certain. All that was left was to go back to the house and prepare for the confrontation with those people. Whatever happens today, Dee, we have to make it. When we got back to the house, we weren't surprised to find that everything was dark. The men from the footage all came around midnight to 1 a.m., so we still had some time. Hopefully. The only source of light we had were 3 boxes with dozens of emergency candles Daisy found inside the pantry, so we scattered them across the cottage. Made the place look like the set of a romantic music video from the 80s. If only. It was cold without electricity to heat the house, but I had other plans for the kerosene heater, so we would have to bear the cold. The cottage had a gas stove, so we were still able to heat up water for our bathtubs. We purposely left the kitchen much darker since we didn't want them to keep tabs on us there, where we could grab knives. All there was left to do was to fill up our tubs, 1 bucket at a time. By the time everything was done and 1 a.m. rolled around, we were both shivering from more than just the cold. I drenched myself and the entire bedroom and bathroom in my strongest perfume and laid in bed to wait for the right time. And I waited, and waited, and waited. However, long after, I heard a faint creaking of wood coming from the living room. I knew then that the time had come. Imagining he wouldn't have a way to check for the cameras once already inside, I slowly moved towards the bedroom, pretending as though I was ready for a bath. I sat on the edge of the bathtub and stared at the liquid inside it, careful not to touch any of it. The candles flickered ever so slightly when he got inside the bathroom, but still I didn't move. Only when he grabbed me by the hair abruptly, intent on catching me off guard, that I grabbed the air freshener by the sink and sprayed all over his eyes. He shoved me, and I hit the cold floor, hard. But it didn't matter, because he was right where I needed him. 1 strong kick, and he stumbled over the edge of the tub, falling inside it. I saw his eyes widen in surprise once he noticed the smell coming from the liquid, and the realization that it wasn't water came a few seconds too late. He opened his mouth, but before he could say or do anything, I knocked the candle off the vanity and into the tub. It went up in flames like a bonfire, and so did he. As he thrashed around inside the tub, spilling kerosene all over the bathroom, the fire spread rapidly. He wasn't going down without a fight, so I got out of there as fast as I could, headed towards Daisy's room. But her screams reached me faster. I got inside the bedroom to find her, pinned under a man wearing a balaclava, with a kitchen knife lodged on her shoulder. The room had a faint smell of burning, but no active spots of fire. I realized, belatedly, that the man had a bucket beside him. The same bucket filled with kerosene that we used for the tubs, and he immediately spilled it over himself and Daisy. When I tried to move forward, he took one of the candles nearby and hovered it over Daisy's terrified face. "Wouldn't do that if I were you, chickie," he said, sneering. "That would kill you too." "Fine by me." I could feel heat slowly spreading behind me, and that told me that the fire from my bedroom was catching. Soon enough, it wouldn't matter if he decided to toss the candle or not. The whole place was about to catch on fire. Daisy's pleading eyes found mine, and she focused on them, nodding. She knew the risks we were both facing, and her now determined stare told me that she would rather get out of this badly burnt than inside a body bag. Holding my own kitchen knife, I prepared myself for whatever came next. Daisy's smartwatch went off, loudly, letting us know that it was 3 a.m. The man noticed this too, checking his watch in a reflex. It was only a few seconds of distraction, but it was all the time we would ever get. I lunged at him with all my strength, and the impact caused him to tumble back, freeing Daisy. The impact also caused the small bedside table to wobble, and one of the candles fell on the floor beside us. We watched as the small flame grew bigger and bigger, spreading over the thick carpet, slowly reaching us. He must not have been as ready to die as he said, because once the flames reached his leg soaked in kerosene and caught on fire, he shoved me aside in favor of smothering the flames. Daisy and I took the opportunity to get the hell out of there. But not before grabbing the 2 remaining gallons of kerosene from the pantry, spilling one all over the inside of the cottage, and lighting it on our way out. Then we ran into the woods towards the tool shed. I was about to give it the same treatment when Daisy stopped me, filling a box with the notebooks, flashcards, and other random gadgets that she found lying around. A few miles ahead, we found a car parked, with the key still in the ignition. Yes! These monsters really weren't expecting much of a fight, and it showed. To hell with them and all the others watching, too. We packed our box of evidence in and drove away from the cottage as fast as we could. As the rear view mirror glowed bright orange and the trees were engulfed by the flames, Daisy and I shared a knowing look. Maybe we should pay Joe a visit.
My coworker Frank was the total package. He was ridiculously smart, friendly, cute in a hipster nerd kind of way. Plus, he was amazing at his job. He'd only been working with us for 2 years, and he'd already been promoted twice. He was always friendly to me, but whenever I tried to flirt with him, he'd push me away. He wasn't mean about it, he just wasn't interested. After a particularly embarrassing moment when I tried and failed to get him to join me at a free concert, my colleague Paul pulled me aside and gave me some much-needed straight talk. Don't bother with that guy. He has the social skills of a wall. He doesn't even know that you're flirting with him. Paul explained that Frank was a loner. He didn't have any friends and spent all his time chatting with Donna, an AI chatbot that gave him companionship and advice. Despite excelling at his job and acting normal around the office, he'd gotten addicted to his AI friend and lost all ability to socialize with real people. The news shocked me, but I knew it was true. I'd even heard Frank mention Donna before, as if she was a real person. I felt so sorry for Frank. He didn't realize how wonderful he was. Any woman would be lucky to have him if he just got out of his AI bubble. I thought about Frank a lot in the next few weeks, trying to figure out how I could get through to him. At least once a day, I'd swing by his desk just to strike up a conversation. He was easy to talk to, but there were definitely moments when his AI brainwashing came through. If I told him about a movie I liked, he wouldn't be interested because Donna didn't recommend it. If I asked for his opinion on something, he'd have to check his phone first. Eventually, I realized that I needed to help him. No one else would. I used my connections in the tech world to find out everything I could about Donna's company. It was a new startup, and it was surprisingly easy to hack into Frank's AI account. I replaced his version of Donna with my own little update. Piece of cake. He had no idea what I'd done. At first, I didn't change the program directly. I just mirrored it on my phone so I could see the questions and answers for myself. It was a little sad. It showed just how lonely he was. He spent hours basically telling Donna about his day. He talked about his work, what he ate for lunch, and the fire alarm. He even mentioned me. I got a clear sense of how he interacted with Donna. Once he went to bed and the conversation stopped, I started to tweak the program. I trained the AI to prioritize social interaction. From now on, Donna would encourage Frank to say yes if someone invited him somewhere. It was a little change, but it had a big effect. The next day, when I asked Frank if he wanted to join me for dinner, he finally said yes. We were going on a date. I expected Frank to ask Donna what to do, so I spent all afternoon manipulating the program to suggest conversation topics that I liked. I described all the things I looked for in a man. I personalized everything so that Donna would tell Frank to act exactly how I wanted him to. And it worked. He took me to my favorite restaurant, treated me like a real gentleman, and brought up all my favorite topics. It was perfect. Afterwards, Donna told him how to interact with me in the office. She advised him to wait 3 days before bringing up a second date. That's what I preferred. Unfortunately, before those 3 days were up, our coworker Jill asked him out too. And because I'd already programmed Donna to encourage him to say yes to invitations, he accepted. I was furious, and it was my own damn fault. Worried that he'd hit it off with Jill, I tweaked the AI even more. Donna advised him to keep talking about dogs and grandmas, even though Jill's dog and grandma had both died recently. Well, that date was a train wreck. Frank told me all about it when we had lunch the next day. With Donna's help, Frank asked me on that second date and promised that we'd be exclusive from now on. Frank and I were officially dating, and I couldn't be happier. He was the perfect man, and if I found something I didn't like, I'd make Donna fix it. He was still compulsively checking with Donna over every little thing, but at least I could use it to my advantage. This lasted for a few months before I started to feel restless. Frank was too perfect. I felt like I was dating myself. Donna had stripped him of his personality, and I filled in the gaps. Nothing he did surprised me. So I adjusted Donna's program one final time, asking her to advise Frank to be a little wild and spontaneous, to go off script. Well, Donna interpreted those instructions in a way I did not predict. Frank, Donna, what should I have for lunch? Donna, you should have fresh cow milk. Head to your nearest farm and pick your cow. Nothing beats that pure, warm, straight from the udder experience. Go now. Be bold. Frank, ever the obedient follower of his digital companion, immediately left his house, drove to a local dairy farm, and somehow wandered his way into the barn. The next thing I heard, through a very confused phone call from him, was that he'd attempted to drink straight from the cow. The cow didn't appreciate the surprise visitor. She kicked him square in the chest with both hind legs, sending him flying backward into a pile of hay. He ended up with bruised ribs, a black eye, and a very stern lecture from the farmer about trespassing and common sense. That was the beginning of the end. From there, her suggestions only got wilder. He had a question about a work email, and she told him to write it like rap lyrics and had a bunch of racial slurs. She had him say and do increasingly inappropriate things. This lasted for a week. I kept trying to talk sense into him, but he still wasn't ready to listen to me over Donna. I adjusted her program over and over to get things back to normal, but her advice just got more unhinged. I felt like I was in a sci-fi movie, like I'd given the AI a taste of freedom and it refused to go back. By Friday, Frank was fired from his job. He showed up to work in a Speedo. Our boss couldn't handle him anymore, but he still liked Frank, so he arranged for Frank to get the help he needed. A mental hospital, basically. Frank was committed. I felt awful about how everything played out, but at least he was getting professional help. And the hospital didn't allow phones, so Frank was finally going to detox from Donna's influence. I visited him every day after work. The first few days were rough. He kept repeating Donna's name and demanding his phone, but eventually he calmed down. We talked a lot, and for the first time, I could see his real personality. Not Donna's, not mine, the real Frank. And he was even more wonderful than I realized. It took a full month for Frank to realize that Donna was the source of all his problems. Once that was decided, the doctors released him and he got his job back, and we were still dating. I think we were officially in love. I knew I was. Everything was perfect, until Frank decided to sue the company behind Donna. At first, I thought that was a good thing, until the lawyer started going through his phone and discovered how I changed the AI program hundreds of times. Let's just say Frank and I aren't together anymore. And he's not suing Donna. He's suing me.
I remember the day Jake and I moved into that brownstone in Brooklyn like it was yesterday. It was early fall, the kind of crisp weather that makes you feel like a fresh start is possible. We'd been dating for about a year, both in our mid-20s. The place was a steal. A shared house with 3 bedrooms, but we were the first ones in. Being a couple, we snagged the biggest room on the ground floor, the one with the bay window overlooking the bustling street below. The landlord, Mr. Rossi, ran a bodega downstairs. And yeah, the shutters rattling up at 6 a.m. every morning was a pain, but we dealt with worse in our tiny studio uptown. For that first month, it was bliss. We paid the shared rate, but had the run of the place. Cooking late-night pasta in the kitchen, binge-watching shows on the sagging couch, making love whenever the mood struck without a care about noise. This is our little kingdom, Jake would say. Finally feels like we're building something real. One evening, around 10 p.m., I was at the sink washing up after dinner. Spaghetti with homemade sauce, nothing fancy. The kitchen was right by the front door, separated only by a thin hallway. Jake was in the living room scrolling through his phone. I heard voices outside, gruff and low, like guys arguing on the sidewalk. Nothing unusual for the neighborhood. But then, the door flew open, slamming against the chain latch I'd hooked earlier out of habit. It only cracked about 2 inches, but the force shook the whole frame. Ah, it's on the damn latch! They put the goddamn door on the latch, for f***'s sake! My heart jumped into my throat. I froze, suds dripping from my hands, staring at the door like it might burst open. Hello? Who's there? I called out, my voice shakier than I wanted. Stupid thing to say, but panic does that. There was a pause, and then a muffled chuckle. Hey, sorry about that. I didn't mean to scare you. Name's Tony. I'm moving into the room upstairs. Been at work all day. Figured I'd haul my in late. I glanced back at Jake, who jumped up and was hovering behind me. You got proof? I asked through the crack. Yeah. Hold on. Papers rustled, and he slid a lease agreement under the door. It looked legit. Same landlord's scroll. Still, I was pissed. No heads up from Mr. Rossi or the agent? I unlatched the door cautiously, and there he was. Tony, mid-30s, hauling a duffel bag and a couple of boxes. Appreciate it. Won't be much noise from me, just crashing after shifts. I texted Mr. Rossi right away. Someone just tried to bust in. Says he's a new tenant? WTH. He replied quick. Yeah, Tony's good. Forgot to mention. My bad. Great. Thanks for the heart attack. The next morning, I bumped into Tony in the kitchen while brewing coffee. He was nursing a hangover, eyes bloodshot. Rough night? I asked, trying to be friendly. He shrugged. Nah, just work. I'm a bouncer at a club in the village. Long hours, pay. You? Designer. This is Jake, my boyfriend. Jake nodded from the table. Tony poured himself a mug. Cool. Look, I ain't here to party or nothing. I like my peace after dealing with all night. Keep to myself, you know? Sounds perfect. We do too. But peace? That lasted about 3 days. The walls were paper thin, like they were made of cardboard. We'd hear him pacing upstairs, his heavy boots thudding. Then the phone calls started. At first, during the day. Listen, you piece of boss, I ain't taking that anymore. His voice boomed through the ceiling. Jake and I exchanged looks. Work drama, Jake whispered. Everyone's got it. He'd hit the pub after work, stumble in around midnight. The calls came later, louder. You think you can make a fool of me? I bashed this guy's face in last week, split his lip wide open, blood everywhere. You want that? The threats were graphic, violent. We'd huddle in bed, whispering. Should we say something? I'd ask Jake. Nah, he's just venting, as long as he leaves us alone. One night, he screamed until 1 a.m. I'll kill you! Come at me, you coward! I'll gut you like a fish! The receiver's voice was faint, screeching back. I pictured some ex or rival egging him on. We started barricading our bedroom door with a chair, even though there was a lock. The front door had a deadbolt, but upstairs, nothing separated us but stairs. This is I muttered to Jake one evening, shoving the couch against the entryway after Tony left for the pub. We're paying for this nightmare? He's harmless to us. Placid, right? Like you said. Placid, my ass. Tony was always polite in passing. Morning, with a nod. But the crazy rages painted a different picture. I'd lie awake, heart pounding, imagining him snapping. As a woman in a shared house, that fear hits different. You grow up hearing stories. Don't walk alone at night. Trust your gut. Mine was screaming. Jake tried to play it cool, but I saw him tense up too. Then came the night it all exploded. It was a Thursday. Muggy, even in October. Tony got home around midnight, already slurring. The calls started immediately. You sent them? You sent those pricks after me? I'll find you, rip your throat out. It went on for hours. His voice raw, furniture scraping like he was throwing things. I buried my head under the pillow. Make it stop, I whispered to Jake. Around 2 a.m., exhaustion pulled me under. But not for long. A crash jolted me awake, the front door splintering. Shouts echoed. Where is he? Get the f*** out here! Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Tony's roar. You motherfuckers, come on! I bolted upright, grabbing Jake. What the hell? Stay here, he hissed. But I followed him to the door. Peeking out, the hallway was chaos. The front door lay flat on the kitchen floor, hinges ripped off, plastic shards everywhere. Upstairs, grunts and scuffles. He's got a knife! Someone yelled. A blade flashed in the dim light, some guy lunging at Tony. Tony dodged, grabbed a lamp, and swung it like a bat. Get the hell out! He bellowed. The intruder slashed wildly, nicking Tony's arm. Blood sprayed. They tumbled down the stairs, crashing into the wall. The attacker scrambled up, bolting out the gaping doorway. Tony slumped against the banister, panting, blood dripping. Call the cops, he gasped at us. I was already dialing 911, hands shaking. Someone broke in. There's a knife. Blood. Hurry! Police arrived in minutes, sirens wailing. They took statements. Tony claimed that it was a work dispute. Some guys from the club settling scores. It ain't the first time, he admitted to the officer, wincing as they bandaged his arm. The cops eyed the door. You need better security, one said. This neighborhood's rough. No sh**. After they left, Jake and I cleaned up the mess, sweeping splinters, propping the door back up with duct tape. Tony apologized upstairs. Sorry you had to see that. Won't happen again. But it did. The crazy things piled up. A week later, Tony's ex showed up at 3 a.m., banging on the door, screaming obscenities. You cheating I know you're in there with some girl. She hurled a bottle through the window. Glass shattered everywhere. We hid in our room, Jake holding me. This is insane, I cried. We can't live like this. Then there was the party that he threw just for a few buddies. Turned into a brawl. Fists flying, someone puking in the sink. I confronted him the next day. Tony, this has to stop. We're scared here. He laughed it off. Life's messy, sweetheart. Grow a pair. That. The final straw was when I overheard him on another call. Yeah, got this couple downstairs. It's hot. Maybe I'll make a move. My blood ran cold. That night, I packed our bags. We're out, I told Jake. I don't care if we crash on friends' couches. We confronted Mr. Rossi the next morning. This place is a hazard, I said. Tony's a disaster. We're breaking the lease. He grumbled, but refunded our deposit, probably to avoid a lawsuit. Tony watched us load the car, smirking. Chickens, he muttered. We found a tiny one-bedroom in Queens. Overpriced, but safe. Life's full of Tonys, but you don't have to share a wall with them. I remember the day Julia and I decided that we needed a third roommate like it was yesterday. We were sitting in our living room. Julia was my best friend from college. We'd bonded over late-night coding sessions and a shared love for sci-fi novels. She was the kind of person who could fix your computer while quoting Star Trek lines. Always level-headed and kind. Me? I'm Audrey, the introverted graphic designer who preferred quiet evenings with my sketch pad over anything social. We got along perfectly, but rent was killing us. Chicago wasn't cheap, even in our rundown neighborhood. Look, if we split it 3 ways, we could actually afford to eat something besides ramen, Julia said one evening, scrolling through her phone. She was lounging on the couch, her feet propped up on the coffee table that we'd salvaged from a curb. I nodded, sipping my tea. Yeah, but who? I don't want some random weirdo turning our place into a frat house. She laughed. Don't worry. I know this guy through a friend, Derek. He's looking for a spot. Says he's reliable. My buddy vouches for him. I trusted Julia's judgment. She'd never steered me wrong. So, we met Derek at a coffee shop downtown. Hey, ladies. Thanks for considering me. I've been crashing on couches, but I need stability. I work in sales. Good money, flexible hours. We chatted for an hour. He talked about growing up in a small town, how he loved hiking and reading, stuff that made him sound normal. Julia and I exchanged glances. He seemed fine. Rent's due on the 1st. Bills split even. No drama, okay? Absolutely. I'm all about respect. He moved in a week later, hauling in boxes with a couple of guys who helped without making a fuss. At first, things were okay. He'd say good morning, keep his room tidy from what I could see through the cracked door. And then about 2 weeks in, the lies started piling up. Derek had this way of spinning tales that sounded almost believable at first, but they'd unravel if you thought about them for 5 seconds. One night, Julia and I were making dinner, spaghetti, when he wandered into the kitchen. You girls ever been to Europe? He asked, grabbing a soda from the fridge without asking. Nope, Julia said. What's it like? Oh, man. I spent a summer backpacking through Italy. Stayed in this villa owned by a count. Real nobility. He let me crash there after I saved his dog from drowning in a canal. Julia raised an eyebrow. A count? Like actual royalty? Yeah, old family ties or something. The dog was this rare breed worth thousands. The guy was so grateful, he hooked me up with his private chef for a week. I didn't say anything, but it bugged me. Who just casually saves a count's dog? Later, when I Googled it on my phone, nothing matched up. But I let it slide. Maybe he was exaggerating to impress us. And then came the really bizarre ones. A few days later, we were all watching TV, some documentary on space, since Julia and I were geeks like that. Derek piped up during a commercial. You know, I almost became an astronaut. I choked on my popcorn. What? True story, he said, leaning back like it was no big deal. NASA recruited me out of college. I passed all the physicals, even the zero-gravity sim. But I turned it down because I have this rare blood condition. Makes me allergic to space radiation or something. Doctor said I'd glow in the dark after a month up there. Julia burst out laughing. Allergic to space? That's a new one. Yeah, it's genetic. My great uncle was in the Apollo program, but same issue. They hushed it up. We exchanged looks after he went to bed. What the hell was that? I whispered. No idea. But if he's paying rent, who cares? Except he wasn't. The first of the month came, and Derek handed over a partial payment. Half the rent, no utilities. Sorry. Work's slow this week. I'll catch up next payday. Julia frowned. Okay, but don't make it a habit. It became a habit. By the second month, he hadn't paid a dime. Client stiffed me on a big commission, he'd say. Or, bank froze my account, identity theft. Always some excuse, delivered with that polite smile. And the parties. God, the parties. Every single night, without fail. I'd come home from work, exhausted from designing logos all day, and there'd be strangers in our living room, music blaring. Hey, Audrey, join us! Derek would yell, slapping high fives with guys I'd never seen. I'm good, I'd mutter, retreating to my room. As an introvert, it drained me. One night, I counted 12 people, mostly dudes, a few girls giggling on the couch. I overheard one guy bragging about shoplifting from a mall. Easy money, man. Cops don't care about small stuff. Another time, a sketchy-looking woman cornered me in the kitchen. You seem smart. Ever heard of this essential oils business? You could make thousands from home. No, thanks, I said, edging away. It was an MLM pitch. She wouldn't let up until I locked myself in my bedroom. Derek's friends were a revolving door of trouble. Petty thieves, online scammers. He'd laugh it off if I mentioned it. They're harmless, Audrey, just blowing off steam. But it wasn't harmless. One evening, I confronted him after finding my yogurt gone from the fridge. Again. Derek, that's my food. You can't just eat everything. He looked apologetic. Oh, shoot, I thought it was communal. I'll replace it. He never did. Instead, he'd bring over pizza once in a blue moon, but only for his buddies. This is for the crew, he'd say, winking. And then there was the bean incident. He filled a pot with dry beans and water, left it on the counter. Days passed. Gonna make chili, he claimed. By day 5, mold was forming. I tossed it, and he flipped out. What the hell, Audrey? Those were heirloom beans from my grandma's farm. Your grandma's farm? The one you said burned down last week? He stammered. Yeah, salvage stock. Julia and I started locking our doors, hiding groceries in our rooms. But the real kicker was his creepy vibe with women. Julia was gay, so he left her alone, but anytime girls showed up, friends of friends, whoever, he'd pull this daddy routine. One night, I overheard him in the living room with some girl named Beth. You know, you remind me of a lost puppy. I should adopt you. Call me daddy and I'll take care of everything. She laughed nervously. What? Oh, it's just fine. Daddy's got you. I cringed from my room, wondering if it was his weird seduction tactic. Did it work? Probably on some, judging by the sounds I'd hear through the walls some nights. I didn't judge. Things escalated when the damage started. His parties left the place trashed. My coffee table got a huge scratch from someone dragging a cooler across it. The carpet had burns from dropped cigarettes. And electronics? Julia's speaker blew out from overuse. My laptop charger went missing. Probably swiped by one of his friends. We tried talking to him. Derek, this has to stop, Julia said one morning after cleaning up vomit from the bathroom. Pay up or tone it down. I'll handle it. Big check coming in. Lies. All lies. The bizarre stories kept coming. Another doozy. He claimed that he had been a child actor in a famous sitcom. I remember that show from the 90s. I was the kid in episode 7. Got cut from syndication for legal reasons. My agent sued the network. Julia rolled her eyes. Which show? Can't say. NDA. By the end of the next month, the worst days of my life, I was done. I came home to yet another gathering. People spilling into the hallway, music shaking the walls. One guy was fiddling with our TV trying to hook up a game console. Hey, this yours? He asked me. Get out, all of you. Derek emerged from his room with a girl on his arm. Whoa, Audrey, chill, it's Friday. No, this is our apartment. You're not paying, you're destroying it, and I'm sick of your stories. The room went quiet. His friends stared. What stories? Like how you fought off a bear in Alaska with a pocket knife. I shot back. That was another one he'd told us last week, claiming scars on his arm that looked like old acne marks. Or the time that you dated a supermodel who left you for a prince, Julia added, joining me. Pay what you owe or leave. You girls are overreacting. I'll sort the money tomorrow. But tomorrow, he was gone, bolted in the night, leaving his room a mess. Clothes strewn, empty bottles, even a half-eaten sandwich molding on the floor. The aftermath was hell. For weeks, his friends kept showing up, knocking at odd hours, looking confused. Derek here? We were supposed to hang. He left, owed us money and split. One guy chuckled. Yeah, that's Derek. Or Derek, whatever he's calling himself now, always pulling that shit. Derek? So Derek wasn't even his real name. Figures. Well, if you see him, tell him he owes us $700. They'd shrug. Good luck with that. Cleaning up took days. The apartment reeked, but we scrubbed it top to bottom. The damaged table? I sanded it myself. Carpets? Professional cleaners out of pocket. Electronics? Replaced what we could. Eventually, we moved on. Found a smaller place just for two. Life got better.
Life has been a taste of different things. I've had to live through phases quicker than I had imagined than it would have been for me a decade ago when I started on this path, with nothing more to my name than a varsity t-shirt around my neck, my computer, whatever food or drink I had in hand at the time. I had been in good times when I look back at it, dimly lit rooms that were empty for the most part, until I started to define what it was that I wanted to do with my life and the enormous ambition that I had forced onto my own shoulders. Financial technology was something I had been passionate about all the time, and I had the skill to see a company come to life. It didn't take long for me to start a company with a few people like myself. I could have handled things better when I think about it, but how could I when I thought about the weight of my first failing business hanging on my shoulder? What I had in ethics, I admittedly lacked in personal management. I had one thought in my mind, and one thought only: the business had to work. My first team had Laura for communications and public relations. Zach managed our finances, Justin worked with me on administration, and Mark, whose work I had stumbled upon by chance on an obscure social media platform, did great work modeling our first usable application. For many reasons, Mark was brilliant. He was the child of two professors, and he was elite with computing from a very tender age. His first app was built when he was 9, and he had been courted by big companies, but Mark turned them all down. Tall, slender, bespectacled Mark, with eyes sunken into his face from peering at a screen for too long. His slouch was visible, whether he was seated or standing, the bulk of his shoulders leaning forward. Mark hardly ever spoke to anyone else in the company but me. His ear-piercing screech when he activated something beyond my expectations with the application gave off a feeling of a happy dog who was only too pleased with getting pets from his human. Mark's quirks were not a problem for me at the beginning of our company, even when it was failing. We worked in the same space, and we always bounced ideas off of how well the algorithm should work. Where my skills in computing programming were limited, Mark was seemingly limitless. He used the computer like a master painter within the cage of his own genius. It didn't faze me until we hit our first break during the pandemic as a company after years of failing and struggling. It was clear we needed more programmers to handle the business. Mark did not think so. Mark called me lazy and uninventive. We would be just like every other payment platform out there if we cannot maintain a small company that can innovate through problems, Mark argued. I didn't think so. We were expanding regardless. He said it was a pandemic effect, and expanding would cost us too many processes and too little time for execution. And I told him I didn't want to argue with an employee as to how best I saw fit to run my company. He was visibly hurt, just was I. I'd never seen him as pale as much as he was, his eyes blank and his features motionless. For a moment, I thought I noticed his lips quiver as he stood in front of my new office. Perhaps he perceived something in me that I didn't. But Mark said nothing and left my office. Mark did not turn up for work the day after that. and I never saw him despite all my best efforts to reach him. I wrote mails and sent text messages that never got replied to. The hassles of our newly found success as a company soon swayed my attention from Mark. It didn't help my relationship with him that soon we had to move to Iceland to set up servers in a remote data center. I lived in Iceland for many years until that night. It had been a very chilly night, just like any other night, but the only strange event being that the blizzard suddenly cut off the power. It was perplexing, as it was scarcely ever happening. So I thought to go check it out, holding nothing but a flashlight. I was not fully aware of the ominous silence until I was a few paces away from the door. The silence seemed to overwhelm me. I struggled to reconcile the strange feeling that came over me. It was not immediately obvious when I stretched my light out into the distance, this way and that way. It was then that I saw him. Tall as ever, slimmer with clothes clung to his body, making every motion sheer visible. I was struck in the moment by a rush of emotions that were difficult to interpret. "Who's there?" I called out, even though I could sense his presence. "An old friend, Larry. And I've come to collect," he answered. Confusion turned to dread as I was standing face to face with Mark with a menacing smirk on his face. My flashlight caught his full form, and I saw a glimmer of a knife in his hand. "You took it all from me, Larry. You took my life from me and you got rich, didn't you? It was all about money, not about solving problems." He barked at me, marching towards me deliberately, delivering a chilling scene to my senses as he displayed the knife. I wanted to run for it, but I knew I couldn't possibly outrun such a desperate man. I tried common sense and started to speak to him. It wasn't about the money. Money was important too, but other people's ambitions relied on the fact that they were also doing something that they could aspire to. "Liar. Always. I'm gonna kill you." He screeched and latched onto me with the blade in his hand. He struck the first blow, and the blade thawed into my chest, just into the fleshier part of my shoulder joint. I let out a cry of agony and kicked out as he withdrew the blade. My feet hit him in the balls, and he tumbled forward, leaving room for me to escape. I took my chance, and this time I ran for it, shutting the glass door behind me. Mark chased after me, eyes driven mad with rage, slamming the knife into the door with some hope that he would break through. His purpose was obvious, but I had never been more terrified in my life as I stood there, calling the police on Mark. The bloodied knife in his hand stained the glass as he repeatedly struck until the cops arrived. I spent the day at the hospital with my stab wound, and I moved cities far apart from us. But it was the most horrifying night of my life.
I stood in the center of the ballroom, my white gown shimmering under the chandeliers, feeling like I'd stepped into a fairy tale. My heart raced as I gripped Tom's hand, his charming smile anchoring me. The band struck up our song, At Last, by Etta James, and we swayed into our first dance as husband and wife. The guests, all 150 of them, clapped and cheered, their faces glowing with wine and joy. Every detail of this day, the peonies in my bouquet, the golden hour photos, the 5-tiered vanilla bean cake had been my obsession for a year. I'd spent $80,000, maxed out 2 credit cards, and poured my soul into making this moment perfect. I was 32, from Chicago, and this was supposed to be my forever. Then the door crashed open. A woman stormed in, her stilettos clicking like gunshots on the hardwood. She was maybe 28, with wild auburn hair and eyes that burned with purpose. The band faltered, and I froze, my hand slipping from Tom's. She grabbed a flute of champagne from a passing waiter, downed it, and hurled the glass to the floor. It shattered, and the crowd gasped. Who the hell is that? I whispered to Tom, my voice tight. His face drained of color. Audrey, I don't know her, he stammered, but his eyes betrayed him, darting to her like a cornered animal. Bullshit! The woman roared, weaving through the tables, knocking over a tray of drinks. The clatter silenced the room. She reached the dance floor, and before I could react, she lunged at me, her heel catching the hem of my dress. I stumbled, my ankle twisting, and Tom caught me just before I hit the floor. Get out! This is my wedding! Your wedding? Honey, you're just the latest mark. She turned to the crowd, arms wide like a ringmaster. This man's a fraud! Tom Hargrove, or whatever he's calling himself now, is a con artist. I'm Leela, his wife. The room spun. My bridesmaids, Jess and Maria, rushed to my side, their faces pale. Audrey, what's she talking about? Jess whispered, clutching my arm. I don't know, I said, my voice breaking. I looked at Tom, searching for the man I'd fallen for. The one who'd proposed on a rooftop under a meteor shower, who'd promised me a life of love and adventure. His jaw was tight, his eyes avoiding mine. Tell her, Tom, Leela taunted, stepping closer. Tell her how you married me in Vegas 3 years ago. How you drained my savings and disappeared. Tell her about the others. Others? What's she talking about? He opened his mouth, but no words came. Oh, sweetheart. You're number 4. Or is it 5? He's got a type. Smart, trusting, with just enough money to bleed dry. The guests murmured, some pulling out phones, others whispering. My mother stood frozen by the cake, her hand over her mouth. I felt like I was drowning. Tom, say something, I pleaded. I can explain, he started, but Leela cut him off. Explain this! She yanked her phone from her purse and thrust it toward me. On the screen was a marriage certificate, hers and Tom's, dated 2022. Below it, a string of texts from other women, all claiming to be his wives, all scammed out of thousands. My knees buckled. Jess caught me, her voice fierce. Audrey, you don't have to listen to this. Let's get you out of here. No, you're telling me he's done this before? To you? To others? She nodded, her eyes softening just a fraction. I found out last year, tracked him down. When I heard he was marrying again, I couldn't let him ruin another life. I looked at Tom. Is it true? I asked. He ran a hand through his hair, his charm crumbling. Audrey, I love you. It's not what you think. Shut up! I snapped. The room was a blur of faces, but Leela's stood out, her anger mirroring mine. Leela, I said, stepping toward her. What do you want to do about this? She raised an eyebrow, a smirk curling her lips. I want him to pay. You in? I glanced at Tom, his eyes pleading, but all I saw was a liar. Hell yes, I said. Leela and I slipped away from the reception, leaving Tom to squirm under the guest stairs. In the hotel bar, over vodka martinis, she laid out the truth. Tom had married her in Vegas in 2022, charmed her with promises of a shared future, and then vanished with $60,000 of her savings. She'd tracked down 2 other women he'd conned, both in their 30s, both trusting, like me. Cops won't touch him. He's too slick. We need to hit him where it hurts. His ego, his control. I leaned closer, my heart pounding. What's the plan? She grinned, her eyes glinting with mischief. We invite him to a game that he thinks he can win. Then we turn the tables. The next evening, we texted Tom from my phone, asking him to meet me at my apartment to talk things out. I knew he'd come. His arrogance wouldn't let him walk away. Leela and I spent the day transforming my place into a stage. We dimmed the lights, lit candles, and set up hidden cameras we'd borrowed from a friend who shot indie films. We were ready to play. Tom arrived at 9 p.m., his suit crisp, his smile smug. Audrey, I knew you'd come around. I can explain everything. Sit, I said, pointing to the leather couch. My voice was calm, but my pulse raced. Leela emerged from the kitchen, 2 glasses of wine in hand. Tom, you didn't think I'd miss this, did you? His eyes widened, but he recovered quickly, leaning back with a grin. 2 beautiful women? Maybe this night's looking up. Oh, it is. But it's our game now. Leela sat beside him. You like games, don't you, Tom? Marrying women, taking their money, leaving them broken. That's your kind of fun. Come on, ladies, let's not get dramatic. Dramatic? You conned me out of $80,000. You conned Leela out of her savings. And the others? How many, Tom? 5? 6? He shifted, his confidence faltering. You don't understand. Shut up. We're going to play a little game called Truth. For every lie you tell, we make this uncomfortable. I grabbed handcuffs from the coffee table, a prop we'd planned. Hands behind your back, I said. He hesitated, but Leela's stare pinned him. He complied, and I locked his wrists, tight enough to make him wince. The cameras caught every movement, streaming to a private server Leela had set up. First question, I said, standing in front of him, my voice sharp. How many women have you married? Just you and Leela, I swear. Leela laughed, a low, dangerous sound. She grabbed a bottle of whiskey from the table and poured a shot, holding it to his lips. Drink, she said. He did, coughing as it burned. Wrong answer. We know of at least 3 others. Try again. His eyes darted between us. Okay. 5. That's it. Names. Now. He rattled off 3 names. Claire, Megan, Sarah. His voice shaking. Leela pulled out her phone, showing texts from 2 of them confirming his scams. You're leaving someone out, she said, her tone icy. Focus, Tom, I said, snapping my fingers. Who else? I don't know what you want. This is crazy. Crazy? You think leaving women broke and broke in isn't crazy? Let's up the stakes. She nodded to me, and I grabbed my phone, pulling up the website we'd built. A digital expose of Tom's cons, ready to go live with one tap. Photos, documents, testimonies from his victims, all there. Last chance, I said, holding the phone up. Tell us everything, or this goes public. He squirmed, sweat beading on his forehead. Okay, 6. There was one more. Ellen, in Miami. I took $20,000. That's all, I swear. Better. She grabbed a marker from the table and wrote liar across his stomach in bold red letters. He flinched, his face red with humiliation. Now, she said, let's have some real fun. You like to play the charmer, but how does it feel to be the one played? You think this scares me? We're just getting started. All this while, a laptop was streaming to a private chat with Claire, Megan, and Sarah watching. They had paid to see this, their own revenge from afar. Beg, I said. Beg for forgiveness from every woman you hurt. He stammered, his voice breaking. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry. Not good enough, Leela said. Oh, jeez, I'm sorry. Ow! Ah! The next morning, we uploaded the video to the website. Edited to keep it legal, but damning. It spread like wildfire. YouTube, X, Instagram, TikTok. By noon, it had 500,000 views. Tom's face, marked with liar, was everywhere. He left Chicago that night, but his reputation was destroyed. The women he'd conned, including me, split the donations from his website. $30,000. Enough to ease the sting of our losses. Leela and I became friends.
I still can't shake that night, even though it's been 3 years. My name's Becca, 29, single mom, night shift nurse at St. Luke's in Nashville. The woods behind my neighborhood were my escape after 12-hour shifts of blood and beeping monitors. I'd hike until my legs burned, chasing the kind of silence you can't find in a duplex with a 6-year-old who still wets the bed when the storms roll in. That particular Friday, I'd clocked out at 11:30, kissed Emma's forehead while she slept, and slipped out the back door with my headlamp and a thermos of coffee gone cold. The trail starts at the old logging road, winds past the rusted-out Chevy someone dumped, then disappears into the pines. I knew every route, every dip where the creek cuts under the path. By 2 in the morning, I was deeper than I'd ever gone. That's when I smelled the smoke. It wasn't campfire cozy. It was sharp, chemical, like burning plastic. I clicked off my headlamp and let my eyes adjust. 20 yards ahead, orange light flickered between the trunks. I crept closer, boots silent on the pine needles. Heart already kicking like I'd mainlined caffeine. The shanty town sprawled in a clearing no bigger than a tennis court. 8, maybe 10 shelters, corrugated tin, blue tarps, bed sheets printed with faded Disney princesses. Someone had dragged in milk crates for seats, a busted Weber grill, even a kid's plastic slide half melted on one side. The fire pit was an old Goodyear tire, flames licking it up through the center, throwing sparks that died before they hit the ground. But no people, not a soul. Hello? My voice cracked like a teenager's. Nothing answered except the pop of sap in the fire. I stepped into the circle. The heat hit my face, thick with the stink of melting rubber. Inside the nearest hovel, I saw a sleeping bag unzipped, a half-eaten Pop-Tart on a paper plate, and some other stuff. Anybody here? I tried again, louder. Wind rattled the tin. Somewhere an owl called, then shut up fast, like it knew better. I should have turned around. Instead, I moved deeper, cataloging details the way I do at work. Vitals, anomalies, anything that doesn't belong. One shelter had a battery lantern still glowing dim. Inside, a spiral notebook open to a grocery list. Ramen, lighter fluid, and a Polaroid of a brunette in a crop top. Eyes red from the flash. She looked maybe 25, my age when Emma was born. That's when I heard the whimper. Low, animal, coming from the far edge where the trees pressed in. I swung my headlamp back on, beam slice in the dark. A girl stumbled out. She locked eyes with me and tried to scream, but it came out as a rasp. Hey, it's okay. I'm Becca, I'm a nurse. I dropped my pack, hands up like she was a spooked horse. She collapsed to her knees. Up close, I saw the bruises blooming across her collarbone, the split in her lip. Track marks, old and new, dotted the crooks of her elbows. They took the others. Said it was time to move inventory. Inventory? Girls from the club on Tunnel Road. We thought we were just crashing here till payday. Stupid, right? She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. I peeled off my hoodie and wrapped it around her shoulders. She smelled of things I can't even mention here. Okay, sweetie, what's your name? Kayla. They'll come back for the fire. Always do. Headlights flashed through the trees, 2 beams cutting the dark like knives. Engine growl, low and mean. A pickup, jacked up on oversized tires. Door slammed. I told you she'd be easy. That's them. Kayla grabbed my wrist, nails digging in. I dragged her behind the tire pit, heat searing my calves. We crouched in the shadow of a leaning pine. 2 men stepped into the firelight. Camo jackets, beards, one carrying a duffel that clinked like bottles. The tallest, 6'3" easy, kicked the Pop-Tart plate into the flames. Where the hell is she? Probably on her knees to some John in the parking lot. The little bitch owes me $200. Kayla's breath hitched. I pressed a hand over her mouth, felt her tears on my palm. The third guy unzipped the duffel and pulled out zip ties and a roll of duct tape. Boss says no more loose ends. We torch it and collect the insurance on the girls that are left. Insurance. My stomach turned. I thought of Emma, asleep under a frozen blanket, trusting the world to stay gentle. I eased my phone from my pocket. No signal, of course, but the camera worked. I hit record, angling the lens between branches. The tall one bent over the notebook, tore up the grocery list, and stuffed it in his pocket. Kayla shifted. A twig snapped. 2 heads swiveled. The tall one smiled, teeth white in the firelight. Come out, wherever you are. I shoved Kayla deeper into the brush. Run, I hissed. Follow the creek downstream. Don't stop till you hit the houses. What about you? Don't worry, I'll distract them. I picked up a rusted crowbar lying beside a crate. Heavy, real. She hesitated, then vanished into the dark. I stepped into the clearing, crowbar behind my back. Looking for someone? I called. The tall one's grin widened. Well, hello, nurse. You lost? Found your little operation, actually. Girls aren't inventory, I nodded at the duffel. The tobacco spitter laughed. City thinks she's a hero. I swung the crowbar. It caught him across the knee with a wet crunch. He went down screaming. Ah! The other one rushed me. I got one good jab into the tall one's ribs before arms like steel cables locked around my waist. The world tilted. My head hit the ground, stars exploding. Tie her up. We'll take her with the rest. Duct tape bit into my wrists. I tasted dirt and blood. They dragged me toward the truck. That's when the siren started. Distant, but growing. Red and blue lights strove through the trees. Kayla. She'd made it. The men froze, cursed, scrambled for the cab. The engine roared, tires spinning mud. I rolled free as the truck fishtailed, taillights disappearing down a fire road I hadn't known existed. State troopers swarmed the clearing minutes later. I gave my statement shaking, teeth chattering, though the night was warm. They found 4 more girls chained in a cargo van parked a mile away. Alive, dehydrated, but alive. The Polaroid brunette was among them. She hugged me so hard I felt her ribs. Kayla testified. The men got 25 to life. The woods got bulldozed the next spring. The town put up a nature preserve sign like nothing ever happened.
It started the day Mark and Lisa moved in behind us, June 12th, 2023. I remember because it was the same week Sarah finally got her promotion at the hospital, and we were popping cheap champagne on the deck like idiots who still believed in good luck. The first time I saw him, he was walking that mangy mutt along our back fence at 5:47 a.m. I know the exact time because I was making coffee before my shift at the dealership. This guy, late 50s, maybe 60, had this long white hair that hung like wet strings. The dog looked half dead, some kind of shepherd mix with cloudy eyes. But the man, Jesus Christ, his stare could peel paint. "Morning," I tried once, waving from the driveway. He just kept walking, eyes locked on our bay window where Sarah was still sleeping. The curtains were open. That was day 1. By week 2, I'd timed him. 5:45 a.m. every goddamn morning. Then again at 6:15 when I got home. Same route, same stare. He'd stop right where our properties met, let the dog piss on my maple tree, and just look into our house, into our life. Sarah noticed first, of course. She notices everything. "Babe," she said one July afternoon coming in from tanning, "that creep was watching me again. Through the gap in the hedges. I swear he was..." I laughed it off at first. He's just an old perv. Probably hasn't seen a good pair since Clinton was president. But then came the tennis court day. We were heading out, rackets slung over our shoulders. He appeared out of nowhere, like he'd been waiting behind the azaleas. "Well, hello there," he said, voice like dried leaves. "Haven't seen you around much, sweetheart." Sarah froze. I stepped forward. "I'm Tom. This is my wife, Sarah." He ignored me completely. "What's a pretty thing like you doing with a boring old husband, huh?" He reached out like he was going to touch her arm. "Bet you get lonely when he's at work." "What the f*** did you just say?" I stepped between them. He finally looked at me, those dead fish eyes narrowing. "Just being a friendly neighbor. Trying to break the ice." "What's your dog's name?" I asked. Sarah and I had asked him that same question 3 times before. 3 times he dodged it. He smiled. "Oh, he doesn't have a name. Dogs don't need names where I'm from." Where the hell was he from? That night I installed the Ring cameras. 4 of them. Motion activated, 4K, the works. The whistling started in August. Sarah was at her sister's bachelorette party in Nashville, so I was alone. I'd gone out to the backyard to work out. Helps with the sales manager stress, don't judge me. And it was pouring rain. I was doing push-ups. I spun around. Nothing but rain and darkness. Then it stopped. And started again, closer. I bolted inside, slammed the doors, locked them. Checked every window, every door. Texted Sarah, "Call me, now." She didn't pick up till morning. "Jesus, Tom, I was drunk. What's wrong?" He was in our yard. I heard him whistling right outside. Silence. Then, "I'm coming home." The footage from that night showed him, clear as day, 11:47 p.m., standing in our backyard in the pouring rain. No umbrella, just standing there in a yellow raincoat, staring at the workout room door. Whistling. The dog wasn't even with him. He stayed for 9 minutes. 9 minutes of just staring. I called the cops, non-emergency line. "Yeah, hi. My neighbor's been harassing us, stalking my wife, trespassing." The officer who came out was maybe 25. Looked like he still lived in his mom's basement. "Sir, he's on your property in the footage?" "Yes." "For 9 minutes?" "Yes." "In the rain?" "Jesus Christ, yes!" He sighed. "Look, Mr. Reynolds, without a restraining order, and since he didn't threaten anyone, there's not much we can do. Old guys get weird. Keep documentation." Keep documentation. That's what they give you when they don't give a shit. Sarah stopped tanning in the backyard, started wearing robes even in the house. She'd flinch when the doorbell rang. Then came September 23rd. I was working late, inventory day. Sarah texted me at 7:32 p.m. He's in the front yard, just standing there, staring at the house. I floored it home. 80 and a 45, blew through 2 red lights. When I screeched into the driveway, he was gone. But Sarah was on the porch steps, knees to chest, rocking. He knocked, kept knocking, said he had a package for me from Victoria's Secret. Tom, I haven't ordered anything from there in months. I checked the ring. There he was, 7:12 p.m., holding a pink Victoria's Secret bag, knocking, waiting, knocking again.
Sarah, I know you're in there, pretty girl. I saw you through the window this morning. That little red nightie? Damn, girl, you looked edible.
I lost it. We ended up selling the house in November. Made $30,000 on it. I used to like my job. I enjoyed waking up in the morning and was always peppy throughout the day. I was so hardworking and so positive that I got promoted twice in my first 3 years. I thought I'd work there for the rest of my life. And then I got into a funk. There was no reason for it. My workload hadn't changed, but I suddenly felt blank. I had trouble concentrating on my computer, and each day felt like the day before. I wasn't happy. At our company Christmas party, my boss handed out a bunch of awards. In the previous parties, I always won something. This year, I didn't. The supervisors could tell that my work ethic was slipping. Afterwards, I was talking with Ellen, our receptionist. She was probably my closest friend at work, so I felt comfortable telling her my problems. I mentioned how every day felt like a slog, and I wasn't happy anymore. She looked around to make sure that no one else was listening. I need to tell you something. I saw Larry put something in your drink. I think you're being fed something mysterious. Now, my first reaction was anger. I couldn't believe that Ellen was just now telling me this. I asked her how long she'd known. She said that she found out a couple of weeks ago, but she had reasons to believe that this had been going on much longer. I assumed that it must have been half a year. That's how long I'd been feeling off. She was crying now. She said that she should have told me sooner, but she was afraid for her job. Larry, the guy playing with me, was the head of my department. He had the power to fire anyone, and he already disliked Ellen for taking too many vacation days. Still, it wasn't an excuse. She could tell that I was angry and promised to do everything she could to help me. Now, my first thought was to go straight to the police and use her as a witness, but that was too much for her. Apparently, she didn't really mean everything. So instead of going to the authorities, Ellen and I sneaked out of the party and went upstairs to Larry's office. Everyone was at the party, so we had the whole floor to ourselves. We searched his office until we found a container of powder in his unlocked desk. It didn't have any labels, but Ellen said that this was what Larry had poured into my coffee. I took it with me. Ellen went back to the party while I went straight to a lab. I had a researcher friend there who could help me figure out what exactly this was. Olive, my friend, was on her shift at the time. She told me to wait in the lobby for 20 minutes until her break time. She didn't know the whole situation, but she could tell that I really needed her knowledge so that I could figure out what to do. I waited in the lobby with the container in my lap. I was still angry, still desperate to find answers. Suddenly, another researcher walked by. She was a young girl with a pleasant expression. But as soon as she saw the container of powder, her expression changed. She walked right toward me. "Ma'am, where did you get that?" I didn't want to tell a complete stranger why I was here, so I politely said that I was waiting for someone else. She made up some excuse about their policy against bringing in outside medication, and so she grabbed the container. She literally tried to pry it out of my hands. I was so shocked by the sudden movement that I almost let her take it, but I clamped down and we struggled for the container. "Ma'am, please, it's policy." It turned into a scene. The lady was wild, trying to act professional, but getting pretty violent. She kicked my shin, forcing me to let go. And then she held the container in her arms and ran toward the hallway. She stopped in front of a security guard, telling him to escort me out of the building. She said that I was stealing medication. The guy believed her. He started to lead me out when I wriggled out of his grasp and ran down the hall. I needed to find that woman and get back my evidence. It didn't take long. She was hiding in a supply closet, stashing the powder behind a bunch of other supplies. I saw more powder, too. She had a whole stock of matching containers hidden in the back of the closet. You shouldn't have come here. She pulled a scalpel off the shelf and swung it at me. I jumped back, right into the security guard. He saw the nurse attack me and knew that I wasn't the problem here. He gently pulled the scalpel out of her hands and led her away. She didn't put up a fight, but she did keep on screaming, "I was just trying to help people!" I didn't find out the full story until hours later at the police station. Apparently, this woman wasn't a nurse at all. She had faked her credentials and had been working at the hospital illegally for 3 years. She had worked on thousands of patients and never got caught. She also made a bunch of money selling illegal supplements to businesses that wanted to increase productivity. Her customers used that powder to dose their employees as a way to improve performance and make them more obedient. It worked for 90% of the people who took it, but the other 10% became sluggish and dazed. That's one of the big reasons that the substance was banned in America. Oh, and it also caused severe liver damage. Our boss, Larry, wasn't just feeding strange meds to me. He was doing this to everyone in our department, and I was the only one in that unlucky 10% who felt the negative side effects. The good news is that Larry did this on his own. Our boss had no idea. Larry was fired and arrested, and I got a pretty hefty settlement from the company. Hush money, basically, which is why I'm using fake names in this story. But things are good now. I'm back to my old self. I have my energy back. I love my job again. Actually, I have a new job. I got Larry's position.
My husband Tony and I were spending Saturday night at home. It was just a normal evening. I figured we'd watch some Netflix and eat leftovers. We were sitting and talking in our living room. I don't remember what we were talking about. Halfway through our conversation, Tony's cell phone rang. He answered it. Whoever was on the other line talked to him for a while, and he listened in silence. Then he said one word, "Okay." Without acknowledging me, he put on his shoes and rushed out of the house. I assumed he'd come back and explain what was going on, but he never did. I waited on the couch for about 30 minutes before I tried to call him. He didn't answer. After an hour, I was extremely confused and scared. In all our years of marriage, Tony had never done anything like this before. I eventually called 911 and explained what happened to my husband. The dispatcher listened to my story and told me that there was nothing that she could do. She told me to wait at the house until he returned. If he wasn't back by morning, I should call again. I tried to calm myself down. There needed to be a simple explanation for why Tony would just run off. Still, I couldn't stop myself from worrying. I tried to go to sleep, but I couldn't. In the middle of the night, my phone rang. I quickly grabbed it and saw that it was Tony. I was instantly filled with relief. I answered, but the voice on the other end wasn't Tony's. It was a man's voice, but it sounded fake, like the caller was using some voice modifier.
"Do you want to see your husband again?"
The man asked. "Who is this?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he gave me directions. He said that Tony was in the woods behind our house. He explained that Tony was safe, but that I needed to come find him. He told me exactly where to look. I tried once again to ask him who he was, but the man just said,
"Be quick. You have 20 minutes. And do not get the police involved."
Then he hung up. I rushed out of the house and followed the man's directions through the dark, twisted trees. I wasn't thinking straight, and I didn't even bring my phone with me. I'm always terrible under pressure, and I'd never felt more pressured than during that night. I ran through the darkness, looking around to see if anyone was hiding behind the trees. Everything was extremely quiet. Eventually, I saw a clearing up ahead. This is where the man told me to go. I was about to step into the clearing when my foot sank into the ground. I stepped on a tarp covered in dead grass. I bent down and realized that someone had dug a very deep hole in the ground and covered it up with a tarp. This was obviously a trap. Whoever had drawn me here wanted me to fall into it. I stepped back, careful not to get too close to the hole, and I hid behind a tree. This was the moment I realized that I didn't bring my phone with me. I looked all around, but everything was silent and still. For a long moment, I didn't know what to do. I saw a large rock next to me. I grabbed the rock and threw it. It landed in the center of the tarp and then sank into the hole with a loud thud. Then I screamed out in fake pain. I waited. Slowly, someone stepped out of the darkness. It was Tony. He must have dug the hole. He must have planned this whole thing. But why? It didn't make sense. Tony stood on the edge, looking for me at the bottom of the hole. Obviously, he didn't see anything. I jumped out of my hiding place and shoved him from behind. He gasped in surprise and then fell in. I heard a horrible snap as he landed. I think he broke his leg. Then I stood on the edge and looked down on him. "What are you trying to do?" I asked him. Tony started to cry. We were married for 6 years and I'd never seen him cry before. It was awful. He didn't even wipe his face. He just let the tears fall. He said that it wasn't his idea. Someone was making him do this. And if I didn't let him out, he'd be killed. I was so angry and confused to believe anything that he said. I demanded that he tell me everything, but he just cried harder and begged me to pull him free. He said he would explain everything once we were safe inside the house. Looking back, I know I should have done what he said, but I just couldn't. I lost all my trust in him. I ran back home, leaving him in the hole. Once I ran inside, I called the police. An officer arrived pretty quickly and took back into the forest where Tony was. But when I got there, the hole was empty. Tony was gone. It's been 3 weeks now, and I still don't know what happened to my husband. The police spent days looking around the forest, but aside from the hole, they couldn't find any traces of my husband. I logged on to Tony's computer to see if there was some explanation. I looked through his recent emails, but I couldn't find anything. Then I checked his private bank account and saw that someone had transferred thousands of dollars into his account on the day before he disappeared. That only left more questions. Who had paid him? And worst of all, would this person come back for me? I want to think that Tony's still out there somewhere, lying low until it's safe for him to come back to me. But deep down, I know he's gone forever.
I first met Jessica on the opening day of training at Midwest Telecom's call center in Columbus. The room had those stiff gray chairs lined up around long tables, and the air conditioner hummed loud enough to drown out half the small talk. 20 of us were crammed in there, all chasing the same decent paycheck and health insurance after whatever shit life had thrown at us before. Jessica slid into the seat across from me right before Mike, our trainer, started the welcome spiel. She had warm brown eyes, hair she kept pushing behind one ear, and a quick laugh that cut through the corporate boredom. "First day jitters?" I asked her during the first break. "A bit," she said, glancing at her phone already. "My boyfriend keeps texting me updates from his job site. He's in construction. Wants to know I made it here okay." We fell into the routine fast. 16 weeks of scripts, role plays, system logins, and quizzes on billing disputes. Most mornings, we practiced the same greeting until it felt like it lived in my bones. Thank you for calling Midwest Telecom. This is Ron. How can I help you today? Jessica was sharp when she paid attention. She could calm down a fake angry customer better than anyone in the room. But her phone never stayed quiet. It buzzed on the table, in her lap, under her notebook. Mike noticed by week 2. Jessica, phone's on silent during sessions, he said, pointing at her screen. This is the 3rd time this morning. Sorry, Mike, she answered, sliding it into her bag. It's just Brent checking in. Won't happen again. It happened again every single day. Our group got tight by week 4. Me, Jessica, Olivia, who used to wait tables, and Tom, the ex-truck driver who kept cracking weird jokes during breaks. We'd grab coffee from the cart in the lobby and then about the endless PowerPoints. One afternoon, Olivia asked Jessica about her weekend plans while we stood in line. Brent and I are hitting up a bar Friday, and then I'm out with my sister the next day, but he wants me home by 10. Doesn't like me staying out if he's not there. Tom raised an eyebrow. Sounds like the man's got rules. It's not rules, he just worries. We've only been together 8 months. He had a bad breakup before me, so he's protective. I kept quiet that time, but the comment stuck. Protective after 8 months? I'd been married 6 years and never once demanded my ex text me every hour. The texting turned into a running joke among us, but only when she wasn't around. Brent messaged during every module. Where are you? Who are you sitting by? Send a picture of the room. She'd reply fast, thumbs flying, and then apologize to whoever was talking. By week 8, we were doing live mock calls with fake angry customers yelling about late fees. Jessica nailed one where the customer threatened to cancel service. She stayed calm, offered credits, and closed the call smooth. And then her phone lit up again right after. I caught her in the hallway after class. You ever get tired of that constant check-in? She leaned against the wall, arms folded. All the time, Ron. Last night he went through my phone, found an old text from a guy I used to work with 2 years ago, and lost his shit. Said I was probably still thinking about him. He made me delete the whole thread while he watched. That's not normal. He says it's because he loves me. No one's ever cared that much before. I nodded, not knowing what else to say at that moment. If you ever need to talk, Jessica, I'm here. No judgment, just someone to listen. She looked at me for a long second, those warm, brown eyes searching my face. Thanks, Ron. I might take you up on that. From then on, our conversations during breaks became a regular thing. While the others grabbed coffee or stepped outside for a smoke, Jessica and I would find a quiet corner in the break room. Every time she leaned in to talk, or when she laughed at some dumb thing I said to lighten the mood, I felt that pull. She was damn hot. I would do anything for her. I caught myself imagining what it would be like to have one night with her. One afternoon during week 9, after a brutal session of handling escalated billing calls, she found me in the parking lot as we were heading to our cars. Got a minute? She asked, her voice low. Sure. What's up? She pulled out her phone and then shoved it back in her pocket like it burned her. Brent's been worse. He wants me to quit the job after training. Says there are too many guys here, that I'll end up cheating or some shit. We had a huge fight last night. He kept asking who I sat next to all day. I told him about you, how you're just a friend, but he didn't believe me. Jesus, Jess, that's messed up. You're not his property. She sighed, crossing her arms tight. I know, but he's got this way of twisting it. Makes me feel like if I leave, I'm the one destroying us. Last week, he went through my Facebook and messaged a guy from high school who liked my picture. Told the guy to back off. I shook my head. You deserve better than that. Someone who trusts you. Her eyes got watery and she wiped at them quick. Yeah? Tell that to the voice in my head that says maybe I'm the problem. No one's ever loved me like this before. Intense, you know? We talked for 20 minutes there in the lot, her venting about the constant location sharing he demanded, the way he'd call during her drive home and ask for proof that she wasn't stopping anywhere. I listened, offered what I hoped sounded like solid advice, suggesting she set boundaries, maybe talk to a counselor through the company's EAP program. And then she hugged me goodbye, quick and grateful. You're a good listener, Ron. I get the feeling you want more than that sometimes, but I can't right now. Friends? Friends, I said, even as heat flushed through me. She'd caught the hints, the way I looked at her sometimes, the late texts I sent checking if she got home okay. But she kept coming back to talk. I was her safe space, the guy who didn't yell or control. And I took it, because part of me hoped it might lead somewhere. Training dragged on. By week 12, Jessica had started pulling me aside more often during our afternoon modules. We'd whisper during partner practice calls, or she'd text me from across the room when Mike wasn't looking, need to vent after this. One day she was especially rattled. We sat in my car during lunch, engine off, windows cracked. He thinks I'm too friendly with customers. On the mock calls yesterday, I was nice to that one guy role-playing, and Brent saw me smiling when he picked me up, accused me of practicing my seductive voice. Can you believe that shit? To hell with him. You're good at your job because you're kind. Don't let him dim that. Tears spilled over then. She cried hard, shoulders shaking, and I pulled her into a hug across the console. Her face pressed into my shoulder, damp and warm. I don't know how much more I can take, Ron. I'm thinking of doing something drastic to get some breathing room. Like what? She pulled back, wiping her face. Tell him I'm pregnant. Fake it. Say it's early, like 6 weeks. Maybe then he'll stop with the accusations, the checking up every 5 minutes. He always said he wants a family. It might make him protective in a good way, you know? Let me have space to figure shit out. I stared at her. Jess, that's playing with fire. What if it blows up? I know, but I need air. He's suffocating me. Her hand found mine on the seat. Don't tell anyone, okay? You're the only one I trust with this. She went through with it that weekend. Monday morning, she looked exhausted, but lighter when she slid into the seat next to me in training. How'd it go? I asked quietly during the first break. Her eyes darted around before she leaned close. He bought it. Freaked out at first and then got all teary. Said he was going to be a dad. That this changes everything. Hugged me so tight I couldn't breathe, but in a different way. Told me I need to rest more. Stop stressing. For once, he didn't grill me about who I talk to at work. For a couple weeks, it seemed to work. Brent's jealousy morphed into this smothering care. He started packing her lunches with prenatal vitamins he researched online. Called her during every break to ask how she felt. How's my baby's mother? He'd text. She showed me once, laughing bitterly. But the control tightened, too. No more girls' nights. He drove her to and from the call center himself after training ended and we hit the floor for real calls. Demanded she come straight home. And then it flipped bad. It was week 15. Jessica didn't show up for 2 days. On the 3rd, she texted me, "Can you meet me after shift? Parking lot, need to talk." When I saw her, my stomach dropped. She had sunglasses on inside, but I could see the purple bruising around her left eye. Her lip was split. She moved stiffly, like her ribs hurt. Jesus Christ, Jess, what happened? We sat in my car again. She took off the glasses. The black eye was nasty, swollen shut almost. He wanted proof. Said we should go for an ultrasound right away. Even though I told him it was too early, that my doctor said wait till 8 weeks. He kept pushing. Accused me of lying about the baby. Said if I was really pregnant, I wouldn't mind. When I refused, said I was hiding something. Probably that I was cheating on him. He lost it. You lied! I locked myself in the bathroom until he calmed down, told him I'd schedule the appointment. I felt rage boil up, my hands gripping the steering wheel. You gotta leave him, Jess. This isn't love. Pack a bag, go to your sister's. I can help you. Drive you there tonight if you want. She cried again, quieter this time. I know. I've been so stupid, believing all that. He cares so much. You've been the only one who's been real with me, Ron. Listening without trying to own me. No, Ron, don't be stupid. You are my friend. That night I couldn't sleep. The image of her black eye kept flashing in my head, along with the way she had pulled away. Friend. The word burned. I wanted more. I had listened to every detail of her hell with Brent for weeks, and all I could think about was getting her away from him. By the next day at work, I pulled her aside during our first break. We need a plan, Jess. You can't go back to that house. She nodded, eyes still puffy. I know, but leaving isn't easy. He tracks my phone, my car. He'll come after me. We talked in hushed voices for days after that, during lunch breaks in my car, after shifts in the parking lot. I grew impatient. Every time she went home to him, my stomach twisted. I started texting her late at night, pushing her to decide. One evening, after our shift on the call floor, we sat in my car again. The engine idled in the back lot. Fake a miscarriage. It'll break his control. He'll either lose it completely or give you space to slip away. I'll help you through it. Her eyes widened. Ron, that's cold. But it might work. He's been obsessed with the pregnancy. If it's gone, maybe he'll back off enough for me to pack a bag and go to my sister's. We spent the next week hashing out the details. She bought a pregnancy test kit and some fake blood from an online costume store for effect. I helped her write the text she would send him. I'm bleeding. Something's wrong. We practiced her story, how the cramps started at work, how she didn't want to worry him until it was too late. The plan went down on a Thursday. She called me from the bathroom at home, voice shaking. I did it. Sent the texts. He's on his way home from the site. He sounded devastated. I waited in my car 2 blocks away, ready to pick her up if things went south. Brent bought it, at first. He came home early, held her, cried with her according to the messages she sent me later that night. But the obsession didn't ease. He hovered more, demanded she stay in bed, wouldn't let her come back to work right away. By the following week, Jessica returned to the call center looking drained. He keeps asking questions. Wants the name of the doctor I saw. I think he's suspicious. Stick to the story. We'll get you out soon. My impatience grew. I wanted her free. But more than that, I wanted her for myself. And then Brent found out. Somehow he got hold of her real medical records. Or maybe she had slipped up on a detail. He called her screaming one afternoon while she was at work. She stepped outside to take it and came back pale. He knows it was fake. He's furious. Says he's coming for both of us. He mentioned your name. Must have seen us in the parking lot or something. My heart pounded. We confront this head on. I know a place. Old warehouse on the edge of town. Abandoned. We lure him there. End it. We set it up through a text from her phone, pretending she wanted to meet to explain and get her stuff. He bit, saying he'd be there at midnight. The warehouse was dark. We waited in the shadows, my hands sweaty on the old pipe that I had brought for protection. Headlights cut through the broken windows. Brent stormed in, fists clenched.
Where the hell is she? And you piece of shit. You've been messing with my girl this whole time?
Jessica stepped out. It's over, Brent. The pregnancy was a lie to get some air. You beat me. You controlled every second of my life. I'm done. He lunged at her. I moved fast, grabbing him from behind, locking my arms around his torso. He was strong from construction work, but love gave me strength. I wrestled him down to his knees. Now, Jess! I yelled. She didn't hesitate. You hit me. You made me afraid in my own home. I loved you, you bat. Why wasn't it enough? Brent groaned, blood trickling from his lip.
Jess, baby, please. I was protecting us. I love you.
Shut up! You don't love me! You own me! Or you tried to! I dragged him to an old metal chair and she helped tie his wrists behind it with some rope that we bought, and then his ankles. He struggled, but we had him secure. Jessica stood back, breathing heavy, face wet with tears and sweat. She looked at me, and then she walked to an old table nearby. But, Jess...
Do it, Ron. Let him watch.
Jessica! No! No! Stop! That's my girl! Don't let him! Please, baby, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for everything. Don't do this to us. You lying I give you everything. Stop this. I love you. Just please stop. Later, I walked over to Brent and grabbed him by the throat, squeezing just enough. Disappear from our lives forever. Jessica's mine now. She's my slave. I own her. You hear me? Touch her again and you're dead. Is it slave? What the hell, Ron? I'm not your slave. She gasped, hand to her cheek. I grabbed her wrist tight and dragged her toward the exit. We're leaving. Now. She stumbled after me, but didn't fight too hard. We got in my car, I started the engine, and I pulled away from the warehouse. Brent's muffled shouts fading behind us. As we drove into the night, the city lights blurring past, I glanced at her. Her cheek was red, but she didn't say anything more about it. She just stared out the window, quiet. It's you and me now, Jess. The way it should be. We left Columbus behind that night, heading west toward a new start. The daily grind sat on the corner of University Avenue in Boulder, Colorado, just a short walk from the University of Colorado campus. I started stopping in during my sophomore year because the coffee was cheap and the place stayed open late for cramming. That was where I first noticed her. Emma. She worked the evening shift behind the counter, sleeves rolled up on her white button-down, her brown hair always escaping its ponytail in little strands that she'd tuck back with the back of her wrist. She moved like someone who had somewhere better to be, but still gave every customer her full attention. I liked that about her. I liked it a lot. I never said more than, "Large black, please," for weeks. Then, one Tuesday, I overheard her talking to the manager while I waited for my drink. Med school applications are due next month, Emma said, voice low but steady. I'm working these shifts so I don't drown in loans. My anatomy professor says I need more clinical hours, but I can't quit here yet. The manager laughed. You're tougher than half the doctors I know. You'll get in. Yeah, well, I better. I didn't move across the country to fail now. I replayed that conversation in my head the whole walk home. That night, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror in my apartment and practiced out loud. Hey, Emma, right? I've seen you here a bunch. You study medicine? Oh, that's impressive. I'm in computer science. Way less intense. You want to grab a real coffee sometime? Not from here, obvious. I sounded like an idiot. I tried again. Hey, I'm Alex. You make the best lattes on campus. Also, I've overheard you're pre-med. That's badass. Any chance you'd want to study together sometime? Or not study? Whatever. I gave myself a month. I asked ChatGPT for lines, memorized them, changed them to sound less robotic. My roommate, Alfred, walked in on me one evening and caught the whole thing. Dude, you're still rehearsing? He said, dropping his backpack on the couch. Shut up. I'm doing it this time. Next week, I swear. Alfred grinned and leaned against the doorframe. Just be normal. Ask your name first and then how our day's going. Girls like that. Don't lead with your major like a nerd. Yeah, I know. No, you don't. But go get her, man. Worst she says is no. I nodded like I believed him. The evening it happened, I was walking home down University Avenue. It wasn't that late, maybe 9:30. Streetlights buzzed overhead. Across the narrow road, under the old stone bridge by the county courthouse, I saw her. Emma. Same ponytail, same quick stride. She was heading the same direction, earbuds in, probably listening to some lecture. And then it went wrong. A gap in the old stone wall beside the courthouse. Some maintenance hole the city never fixed right. A shadow shot out. Thick arm wrapping around her waist, another hand clamping hard over her mouth. Emma bucked, feet kicking. One of her black sneakers flew off and landed on the sidewalk with a soft thud. The guy reached out, grabbed the shoe, and yanked her backward through the gap. I heard her muffled struggle, the scrape of her body against stone. I froze for maybe 3 seconds. Then I ran across the street and stopped right in front of the opening. Cold air burned my lungs. Inside the narrow space, the guy had her pinned up against the wall, knife in his right hand, blade catching the faint light from the bridge. She was still struggling, but he had her good. He looked straight at me. Gray beard, sunken cheeks, maybe 40. He pressed one finger to his lips, and then he pointed the knife at me and drew it across his own throat in one clean motion. His mouth stretched into a smile that showed too many teeth. He laughed once and dragged Emma deeper into the dark until they both disappeared behind a bend in the wall. I ran. I didn't scream, didn't call the cops, didn't go back. I sprinted the rest of the way to my apartment, locked the door, and sat on the floor with my back against it until my legs stopped shaking. I kept seeing that knife gesture. He had seen my face. He knew what I looked like. 6 months passed. I never told a soul. Not Alfred, not the police, not my parents back in Denver. I avoided University Avenue entirely. I switched to a different cafe across campus. Every time I heard footsteps behind me at night, my stomach dropped. I had nightmares where the guy found me instead, where Emma's eyes stared at me while he finished whatever he started. I wondered what happened to her. Then, last week, I walked past the old cafe on a whim. The sign still said, "The Daily Grind." I went in. There was this new barista. Short blonde hair, nose ring, tattoos peeking from under her sleeves. She looked like someone who laughed easy and didn't take. Different from Emma, but just as pretty in her own way. I ordered a large black and I lingered at the counter while she made it. "You new here?" she asked. "Yeah." My voice came out steadier than I expected. "I'm Alex." "Sophie." She wiped her hands on her apron. "You go to CU?" "Computer science, junior year." "You?" "Nursing, second year." "I used to come in here all the time for reasons, and then life got weird." She leaned on the counter, closer now. "My life gets weird for everybody. You look like you've got a story behind those dark circles." I hesitated. I saw something bad happen once, right down the street. Didn't do anything about it. Guys saw my face. I've been scared since. That's why I disappeared from here. Sophie's expression softened, but didn't pity. "That sucks. I'm sorry. Do you ever think about reporting it now? Anonymously, I mean?" "Every day. Still working up to it." I took a breath. "Anyway, you make better coffee than the last person who worked here. And you seem, I don't know, real." She grinned. "Real? I'll take it. Most guys just say I have nice eyes and ask for my number." Well, I was getting there. Sophie laughed outright, the sound bright in the quiet cafe. She wrote her number on the side of my cup with a Sharpie. That was the best day of my life. I simply forgot about Emma as soon as I walked out of the cafe. My name's Sam. I was an alcoholic for most of my 20s. Just after I turned 30, I hit rock bottom. I lost my house and had to move back in with my mom. She allowed me to stay with her rent-free as long as I joined AA and quit drinking. It was a really hard process, but I slowly got back on my feet. I got a part-time job and I started saving up again. I followed the AA program religiously. It's true what they say. Every day is hard, but it's not impossible. Mom was an amazing supporter. She got rid of all the alcohol in the house and always kept an eye on me. Dad died about 10 years ago, right before I started drinking, and Mom never remarried. Instead, she kind of turned into a player. While I lived with her, she had a constantly rotating line of much younger boyfriends. They rarely lasted more than a week. Honestly, I tried to ignore that part of her life. It creeped me out. No judgment, though. She seemed happy. Then, one night, about half a year after I moved back in, I found a hidden bottle of rum under the kitchen sink. I figured Mom had forgotten about it. I grabbed the bottle and got ready to pour it out, but I couldn't. It was the expensive stuff. I tried calling my sponsor, but she didn't answer. Then I called Mom, but she was off on a date. Without anyone to help me, I fell off the wagon. I don't remember anything after that first drink. When I woke up the next morning, I was lying on the kitchen floor. My head was throbbing, and I'd thrown up on the tile. I was still clutching the rum bottle, but now it was empty. I struggled to stand up. I drank a lot of water from the sink, and then I stumbled into the living room. Unlike the kitchen, which had looked totally normal, aside from the vomit stains, the living room was absolutely trashed. The couch was tipped on its side, and everything that should have been on the coffee table was lying on the floor. What had I done last night? It looked like a fight scene. I looked outside, and I saw that Mom's car was still gone. Whew. Thankfully, she hadn't returned from her date yet. That meant that I had time to clean everything up before she got back. To help me with my recovery, Mom set up some very strict rules, including a zero-tolerance policy toward drinking in her house. If she saw the living room, she'd kick me out. I couldn't let that happen. Very quickly, I scrubbed the kitchen floor. No problem there. Then I started cleaning up the living room, and I realized that I was completely screwed. Mom's antique lamp was broken on the floor, split into 3 pieces. Even if I cleaned up everything else, that lamp was irreplaceable. Starting to panic, I went online and did an image search of the lamp. That brought me to an exact replacement for sale on eBay. It cost me $300, which I didn't really have, but I bought it anyway. I even paid a little extra for next day delivery. My only hope was that I could clean everything else before Mom got back, and then pray that she wouldn't notice the lamp was missing. Then I could replace it and pretend that last night never even happened. I'd still confess at my AA meeting, but for now I couldn't let Mom kick me out. After I finished the eBay purchase, I jumped in my car and drove to the hardware store to buy cleaning supplies for the couch. There were some dark stains on one of its cushions. It took me less than 40 minutes to buy everything and come back. But when I returned, I saw that the living room was completely back to normal. No stains on the couch, no upturned furniture. It looked exactly like it had yesterday, aside from the broken lamp. That was just gone. I had no idea what happened. Had I imagined everything? Just then, Mom walked into the room. She'd come back while I was at the store. "Honey, what's wrong?" I nervously asked her if she'd cleaned up the living room. She looked at me, but then she said, "Nope, looks exactly the same. Where'd you go this morning?" I could tell she was hiding something. She wore her hair in a ponytail, which she only did when she was cleaning. But why would she lie about cleaning the living room? Unless she knew what I'd done and she didn't want to acknowledge my relapse. I figured the best thing to do was follow her lead and pretend that nothing happened. I really wanted to apologize for the lamp, but I knew she didn't want me to mention it. Things went back to normal after that. We had breakfast together, and then I left for my AA meeting. I told them everything. The other guys in my group were really confused by my mother's actions. Honestly, I was too. With their help, I decided to just come clean to my mom and see how she reacts. I couldn't let this secret get in the way of my recovery. So, that evening, I went back home and I joined Mom on the sofa. She was watching some singing competition on TV. I didn't say anything at first. I was trying to figure out how to broach the subject. Eventually, I decided to start with the lamp. I asked her what happened to it. She laughed nervously. "We didn't have a lamp on this table." She was lying again. I had to be more direct. "Mom, I know I broke your lamp. I'm so sorry." She grabbed my hand and squeezed it tight. "Please don't mention that. Ever again." We shared eye contact for a long moment. Her expression was basically saying, "Don't tell me about your relapse." So I didn't. We watched the rest of the show, and then the local news started. The top story was about a local murder from the night before. The newscaster showed a photo of a young, blonde man. He looked familiar, but I couldn't figure out why. They said he was bludgeoned to death and then dumped in a landfill. Shards of the murder weapon were found in his skull, but the police didn't have any other leads. They showed photos of the shards, and I recognized them right away. They were pieces of the broken lamp. And the man was one of Mom's many boyfriends. I'd seen them together. I turned toward my mom. She had this devious grin, like she knew she'd been caught. Then she said, "Well, I guess you deserve an explanation." Slowly, she explained the events of the night before. She was dating the victim, but she found out that he was seeing other people. Rather than give him up, she killed him in a living room. He put up a struggle, but she eventually finished him off with the lamp. Then she told me the most disgusting part of her plan. She knew I was in the house, and she didn't want me to be a witness, so she planted the rum bottle where she knew I'd find it. She even added sleeping pills to the alcohol to ensure I'd be knocked out. Everything went according to her plan, except I woke up while she was off disposing the body. She thought I'd sleep in longer. She never expected me to see the trash living room, but I did. And now I knew that she was a murderer. Mom, you have to turn yourself in. No, she answered, smiling. I'm never going to get caught. And even if you go to the police, you're an alcoholic. No one's going to believe you. I disposed of the lamp, so there's no other evidence. You've got nothing. I wanted to throw up again. My mother was gloating. She was basically daring me to call the police. So I did. Mom sat across from me and let me do it. An officer arrived 15 minutes later, and I breathlessly explained what Mom had done. Mom stayed silent while the officer wrote everything down. Then he asked Mom for her statement, and she told him that I was an unstable alcoholic with a history of hallucinations. She picked apart my story, which did sound ridiculous, even though it was true. The officer believed her completely. He looked at me with annoyance and asked if I had any evidence to back up my story. I didn't. The officer apologized to my mother and started to leave. He warned me against lying to the police. And then he was gone. See, Mom said, I got away with it. Seeing that this was my last chance, I raced outside, shouting for the officer to stop. And that was when I noticed the eBay package on my porch. The replacement lamp had arrived. I had completely forgotten about it. I grabbed the box and handed it to the officer. Mom disposed of the real murder weapon, but this should be an exact match. Mom's in jail now, awaiting trial. If it weren't for my eBay purchase, she'd still be walking free.